Chatterbox Sports Studios. It's Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman.
Well. Good morning, and a sweet, no pun intended, good morning to each and every one of you. Hope you had a great weekend. We welcome you to Off the Bench, presented by our friends at United Dairy Farmers. I'm Thom Brennaman, along with Casey McAllister. Paul Fritzner is back in the house after a big weekend down in Greensboro, North Carolina. Lots to talk about there in a minute. We come your way Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon Eastern Time. You can find us on YouTube/Chatterbox Sports. Flip the notification switch on if you would, please. If you like the show, then like the show. You also can find us streaming on Facebook. That's a Chatterbox Sports page as well. And if you prefer to join us in podcast form, just search Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman, and you're dialed in. There's a reason they call it March Madness, right? You could hear the sound, perhaps in your own living room, of brackets being shattered across the board going back to Friday night. Purdue, gone. Saturday, Kansas, gone. Duke, gone. Yesterday, number 2 seed Marquette, gone. The Sweet 16 is firmly in place, and let's start with the lone home team to get there, the Xavier Musketeers. After a furious comeback on Friday, and a little help from the officials, I might add, survive against Kennesaw State. Anybody who watched the final 5 seconds of that game, 2 ex-players should have been arrested for mugging 2 players, but we'll save that for later. But I give them all the credit in the world. They come back, and then they throttle Pitt in a second-round matchup, 84-73. Jack Nungy had 18 points. Colby Jones, a double-double, goes 14-10. X advances to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2017. In the game yesterday, 6 Musketeers score in double figures. Next up for Sean Miller's team, the first time it's a big test in this tournament for them. They take on number 2 seed Texas, and the tip-off for that game is Friday night at 9:45. Going to be a late night for the X fans on Friday night, but no big deal. The other half of the Midwest bracket has top seed Houston. Sasser's back. Looked great over the weekend. Will take on Miami. Jim Larinaga's team just demolished Indiana to advance to the Sweet 16. Down the road in Lexington, Heartbreak City for Cal and the Big Blue. This might have been the best game for the weekend for just pure entertainment. In the East region yesterday, Kentucky and Kansas State get it on. K-State wins at 75-69 despite being out-rebounded 45-26. Their 5'8" senior. Is it Marquise or Marquise?
Marquise.
Noel.
Yeah.
Wow, what a game. 5'8", pours in 27 points. Kentucky shot just 41% from the field. What a 2-game tournament for Oscar Tshiebwe. Tshiebwe. This guy was unbelievable. He was the best player in the tournament over 2 games. He goes 25-18 yesterday. He hauls in 25 rebounds against Providence Friday night. That's the most in an NCAA tournament game since 1977, but he and his Kentucky mates will watch the rest of the tournament. Kansas State will meet surprise Michigan State at Madison Square Garden. The number 7 seed Spartans just beat up Marquette 69-60. Michigan State was only 2 of 16 from 3-point. Didn't matter. Their defense was stifling when it mattered most. Tom Izzo. I mean, this guy, he reaches his 15th regional semifinal and wins an all-time NCAA record 16th game when his team is a lower seed. The other half of the East has 4-seeded Tennessee against number 9 seed Florida Atlantic. They won that Cinderella showdown 78-70 over Fairleigh Dickinson. Tennessee, I know they lost their best player to an ACL injury, but that team manhandled Duke 65-52. The Volunteers' suffocating defense forces 15 turnovers. This was one team just simply being tougher than the other team. It was no contest. Duke looked soft. The Big East flexed its muscles in 2 other games yesterday. UConn wiped out St. Mary's, 70-55. Now we'll face Arkansas. Hard to believe Arkansas. Their 3rd straight trip to the Sweet 16. They beat number 1 Kansas 72-71, another great game. Devo Davis, 25 points, 8 rebounds. The Jayhawks had no answer for him. The other half of that bracket is a game we've been looking at for quite a while. UCLA and Gonzaga. The Bruins held off Northwestern. Northwestern's got a nice little team. 68-63 the final there. Tell you who else got a nice little team is Penn State. And then the Zags win in a shootout over TCU last night, 84-81. In the South region, Creighton jumped on Baylor right from the get-go. That happened to a couple of Big 12 teams in this tournament, including Iowa State against Pitt. So Creighton advances and will play surprising Princeton. Who saw this one coming? Princeton first knocks off Arizona, then just wallop Missouri. No contest, 78-63. The winner faces either top seed Alabama or 5th seeded San Diego State. In other news, and Paul has a theory about this coming up in a minute, allegedly Rick Pitino is in serious discussions about becoming the next head coach at St. John's. Now, like him or not, whatever job Pitino takes, you better look out if you're in that conference, and in this case, the Big East. There is no doubt about it. He is one of the 5 greatest coaches of all time in basketball. NFL news, the Bengals made it official. It wasn't official Friday when we were on the air, but they signed safety Nick Scott to a 3-year deal. Former Minnesota Vikings star receiver Adam Thielen gets 3 years with Carolina. The Dallas Cowboys acquired Texans wide receiver Brandon Cooks in a trade. That'll cost him a 5th-round pick this year, 6th-rounder next year. The move likely means, not a done deal, but likely means the Cowboys' pursuit of Odell Beckham Jr. is now over. The Detroit Lions and free agent safety C.J. Gardner-Johnson agree on a 1-year, $8 million contract. His former team, the Eagles, offered him a long-term deal. He thought the market would bring more money. Didn't happen. 1 year. Maybe the money comes next year. In baseball, a thriller in the quarterfinal for Team USA. That was Friday night when Trey Turner clubbed a grand slam in the last of the 8th inning in a 9-7 win. Then last night in the semis against Cuba, as he's done in virtually every big game in his career, Cardinal Adam Wainwright delivered the goods, 4 runs of 1-run baseball. He had already given up a run in the first inning, had the bases loaded, nobody out on 3 infield hits. He got out of the jam. Turner would add 2 more home runs in the 14-2 drilling of Cuba. Very few things are more gratifying than drilling somebody like Cuba. Soviet Union, China, Iran, they don't play in this deal. It'd be better to drub them. Cuba's right on that list. Team USA plays the winner of tonight's game between Mexico and Japan. What the hell is so funny over there? I just listed all the evil access of the world, and you guys are laughing about that?
No.
Cuba's on that list. The people are not. The government is.
We got another great one here. Here you go.
Yeah, here's the big one. Here's the big one.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Casey came in. Forget the tournament. Forget the WBC. Forget the Bengals. Forget all of it. He wanted to talk about soccer.
Yes, I did.
FC Cincinnati scores a pair of goals in the final 6 minutes to finish in a 3-3 draw, they call it in soccer, against the Chicago Fire. Nashville comes to TQL Stadium this Saturday night. FC has the 3rd most points in the MLS so far this year. So we can get it out of the way.
Yeah.
Please don't tell me I was just looking at video of this.
Yes.
Yeah, you are.
Absolutely.
Throw it
Tom.
up there, Casey. Why not? Let's lead the show with FC.
Oh
Come on,
my
let's do
God.
it.
This is why.
Oh
you
my
watch
God.
soccer
Here
for
we
this
go. Here we
exact
go.
moment.
Go ahead.
I want our fans to watch this and appreciate Luis Acosta. What a beautiful, just
That is a beautiful
assist.
pass. That is a beautiful pass.
An absolute dime, and FC Cincinnati
My
are right back
Lord.
into
That
the
is a
game
beautiful
thanks to the
pass.
Brazilian.
And I mean, I tell you what, Tom, he had just subbed in, like maybe not even a minute or two into this game, and he kicks that beauty to Santos. Oh, to just breathe new life into the team. They go and score again, tie the game. It ends up being a draw, but most FC fans were wondering, if he was able to do that, I mean, why wasn't he starting the whole game? I get that you're hurt, but I mean, we're a completely different team when he's in the lineup. And it's very clear to see this team is built for adversity when we're all healthy. And I'm excited for this team. I really am. After that game last night, you thought maybe that this is still kind of the same old FC from last year that just wasn't ready to get over the hump. I really, truly do believe this year that they might have what it takes to get over the hump. I mean, coming back from a 3-1 deficit to at least tie it. And
By TCU. Basketball, I couldn't agree with you more on that basketball. It seems like Michigan State is the only team on a regular basis. Wisconsin had a little run in it there for a while. But it seems like Michigan State is the only team that carries the torch, Paul, for the Big Ten. When it all matters.
Yeah, I mean, the Big Ten, again, only one team into the Sweet 16, and we had talked about that so much. Is this going to be another situation where the Big Ten gets 8, 9, 10 teams, however many it might be, into the tournament, and then they only get a run out of one or two of them? And it's exactly what happened. It was funny last night driving home from Greensboro. I was listening to the Miami and Indiana game. I was listening to it on Westwood One, and they were talking, well, if Indiana wins, then they get a second Big Ten team into the tournament. And if Indiana wins, that means Miami doesn't get in, and that's the first time since 1979 that an ACC team doesn't make the Sweet 16. And I'm sitting there going, man, we're arguing about a second Big Ten team or one ACC team.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked all year about how down the ACC was, but it's always kind of hard in such a big sport like college basketball where you have 360-plus teams. When you get into this ecosystem of the same conference, and then they branch out and they play other teams in March Madness, sometimes they have more success. Sometimes you look back on the season, like a retrospective, and you say, well, actually, that conference was a whole lot better than they thought they were. Just they panned out better once they started playing other teams. That was not the way in the ACC. The ACC stunk all year. We knew they stunk all year, and then they ended up stinking in the tournament as well. So, I mean, they did get Miami in. Miami played a good game, and there were injury questions about Miami that they overcame. Michigan State, they took it to Marquette. I mean, this is the first time since realignment that the Big East has had 3 teams in the Sweet 16. It was a banner weekend for the Big East, tied for the most teams of any conference in the Sweet 16. They had a really, really good weekend. And I was doing a show on Friday night after the Xavier game, and I had somebody call in and ask, how many Big East teams do you think make the Sweet 16? And I said I really wouldn't be shocked if there were 3. And I thought Creighton was going to be the odd one out just because I thought Baylor matched up decently with Creighton to the point where Creighton's played a little inconsistently over the last few weeks to where I wasn't really sure what I was going to get out of Creighton. And they came out and took it straight to Baylor. I mean, the entire time, that was a wire-to-wire game for Creighton. So then to now look at Michigan State and what they did to Marquette, I mean, to have 3 Big East teams in the Sweet 16 and for one of them to not be the conference champion of the regular season and the tournament, it's a wild scene. But credit to Michigan State and what they were able to do. Marquette made their runs, but they got into foul trouble early and never really dug themselves out of it.
Well, both teams were really in foul trouble that game.
Yeah.
I mean, both teams were it just goes to show. And look, I never sit here and beat up on college kids. I'm not going to do it. You just wonder how much the Kolick kid, he did not play well in either game at all. I mean, he was a Big East Conference Player of the Year. He just did not play well, and sometimes that's going to happen to these young men or young women in the women's tournament, and it's a shame when that happens because the kid had a phenomenal year. Marquette gone, but as you mentioned, the other three are right there. And in Creighton's case, not so much with Xavier or with UConn, but in Creighton's case, because of all the upsets, now all of a sudden, it's not to say they can't lose in the Sweet 16, but now all of a sudden, that bracket's a little weird where you could see them getting to the Elite Eight.
I mean, all they got to do is beat Princeton.
Yeah,
all they got to do is
Princeton's been great.
Yeah.
They've been great.
Yeah, and Princeton has scored well enough this year. I feel like every time I would turn on an Ivy League game or you're looking at an Ivy League score, you're seeing that Princeton has put up. And then there were also games where Princeton would have some clunkers and wouldn't score at all. So I think that this is going to be a pretty interesting weekend as far as that goes, because if you look, you have of the Sweet 16, 15 of the 16 teams are in the top 32 on KenPom, and then the outlier there is Princeton, who's at 91. So even though Princeton is a 15 seed, they are a top 100 team. They're not the other team. I mean, they are not a top 25, top 50 team, but they are a top 100 team. It's not like you have some team that
right,
like a Fairleigh Dickinson
right,
who's in the 200s.
Right.
It's not like you have one of those. But, I mean, this Sweet 16, and I talked about this the other day. I don't know if it was on this show or one of the other shows, but a lot of people, March Madness, one of the things that makes March Madness so exciting is all the upsets. And everybody loves the upsets, and it's great. It's great for the sport. It's a lot of fun. It's why this tournament is the best event in sports in general over a 3-week stretch. But when you have these upsets like a Princeton or like a FDU or, like a Furman or one of those, the longer those teams stay in, sometimes once you get to the second weekend, once teams have 5 days to prepare. Now, St. Peter's is the outlier to that because last year they actually won in the Sweet 16 to get to the Elite Eight. But a lot of times, you'll have a team like Princeton or like an FDU if they had won, and they get to the second weekend, in the Sweet 16 game, like Florida Gulf Coast back in 2013, and they get blown out. So now you have the cream of the crop. I mean, you have the top 7 teams on KenPom, and 15 of the top 32 are in the Sweet 16. It shapes up for a really, really fun weekend.
Well, it's interesting. Darren Ravel, the highly acclaimed sports business writer, he had an interesting tweet yesterday. And I mean, this is true. You're talking about upsets, and, everybody roots for the upsets until all of a sudden you get to some of these games in the Sweet 16, you're going, oh, man. Not what I wanted to see.
Yeah.
And he pointed out, he says, Madison Square Garden this coming week. Same thing for Baylor. Now, I know they're not the Baylor that won it all 2 years ago. They looked awful. I mean, I don't want to hear it anymore about this stuff about, what conference are they, all this kind of stuff. I mean, come on. And the Big Ten, too. Same thing. SEC gets overlooked all the time. And I tell you, this Musselman guy, I mean, he takes off the shirt. I guess he did it a number of years ago, right, when he was at Nevada. But and that got a lot of the headlines. But it cannot be denied. This guy's a big-time coach. Sweet 16, 3 years in a row at Arkansas. I don't think a lot of people knew that.
No, and I don't think people realize, if you're not really intimately involved with it, I don't think people realize how much they care about basketball in Arkansas.
Yep.
I don't want to say I know it's an SEC school, so I'm not going to fully go to say that it's a basketball school, but they love basketball at Arkansas, and this means a lot to them and their community. This is not an SEC program that is just passing time in the football offseason to get to football, which I guess you could even maybe sometimes argue it would be like in Alabama, although look at what Nate Oates has done there this year to get Alabama to the top of the mountain to be the number 1 overall seed. But Musselman has done a fantastic job at Arkansas. He's completely changed everything around. And the other thing, too, is that if I remember right from yesterday, Arkansas didn't even have their whole team.
Right.
They had a couple of guys out.
One of their best players been out a while.
Yeah, that game was Saturday. But they get Nick Smith back, and he's going to be a lottery pick. They have a couple lottery picks on that team. And that's what I was saying on the Rebound Rundown on Friday. It's like, hey, look, if you're going to give me a team with a couple of lottery picks, I'll roll with them. And it's what I always say, who has the best player on the floor. And Kansas, for some reason, I did not get a chance to watch this game start to finish, so I don't want to go on too much about it just without watching everything yet before I go back and kind of take a look at it. But, yeah, it was a statement for the SEC, too, this weekend where you look at, like, an Arkansas team beating Kansas. But, again, Tennessee getting it done. And I thought we were bound and determined to have another Kentucky-Tennessee game. And then Kentucky was in control of that game.
Yes, they were.
Kentucky was in control of that game. I left at halftime. I had to get home. I could tell the way the game was trending. It was close, and I was like, man, if this goes to overtime, I was already going to get it around midnight. I left around halftime of that game, and the crowd was great. The environment was great. And I listened on the way home, and it just felt like Kentucky was in control of the game. They were up 8 or whatever it was. I think it was 49-41.
First half and second half.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden at the very end, after Kansas State hadn't shot that well all game, there they come. They knocked down, 4 or 5 of their last 5 or 6 shots from 3?
Yep.
Just out of nowhere.
Yep. And that's the one thing Kentucky did not have all year long was a legit couple of guys that you knew could knock down threes.
Well, they did have Antonio Reeves, and then he just didn't show up in the big moment.
Yeah.
I mean, he had his worst game of the season yesterday. It was 1 for 15 from 3, or 1 for 15 from the floor. I think it was 1 for 10 from 3, and the 1 3 didn't even matter because it was in garbage time. So for him to come in there and be the guy that you're trying to rely on, C.J. Frederick had been somebody else that they had wanted to be in there to space the floor, to give you some shooting, and I know he had struggled at points.
Yep.
But it was really Antonio Reeves that just didn't get it done yesterday. And if you think maybe if he had only hit 1, 2, 3 more of those shots, we'd be talking about a different situation here. But 1 for 15 from the field is not good.
Not good. Okay, we're going to walk through the brackets we had and walk through the games that are going to take place here in a second. Are we having some kind of streaming problem today? The guys on the chat are saying that we're going in and out a lot today. You have any idea about that?
So, yeah, I mean, it's not on our end because we're able to stream to Facebook, and it's fine. There's some connectivity issue with YouTube.
Okay.
So I don't know if maybe YouTube is doing some maintenance. It seems to be stable now. So
okay,
get the word out there, people. We're back.
All right.
Back.
Like the video.
Like the video.
Like
share
the video.
Like the video. We got 18 of them so far. We're looking for a lot more than that. A lot more than that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a break. Ham and Eggers will take it, and then we're going to come back and really walk through the rest of the tournament impressions. Of course, we really want to hear what Paul and his experience down in Greensboro with the Musketeers was like. Big weekend for Paul. He made it. His car made it. That is the biggest story of the weekend. It's not Florida Atlantic. It's not Princeton. Not the Cinderella stories. It's that Paul's car, which has been living right on the brink on literally a trip-by-trip basis, made it to Greensboro and back. We thank you, Lord, for bringing Paul back to us. Ham and Eggers, take it away.
It's that time of the show, the Ham and Eggers. These guys are great. Trust me, I would know. I introduce all the best segments.
All right, Casey, you've been working your magic here. I can tell you're stressed.
Oh, well, it's nothing that I can do about YouTube just sucking. I don't know what's going on with that. So I'm sorry for everyone that has been struggling with that. Please bear with us. Seems to be stable now. So I think we're in a good spot. But you know who's not in a good spot?
Oh, no.
All those poor fans last night who picked no, I was about to say it the opposite way. Who was the 4.5? Who?
Oh, my God. Yeah, what a disaster that was.
Yeah, that was
TCU. Plus 4.5.
Yes.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Those poor fans.
Oh, what a disaster. What a disaster. Yeah, that was one of the worst beats of the season. And I've been on the bad end of some of them. I was not on that game. I didn't even know what the line was, but I saw so many people tweeting about it. I knew it had to be something.
0.7 seconds. 0.7 seconds. That's incredible. very, very sorry for all those bettors. I know a lot of you may or may not be struggling, but I saw something the other day that 33 and 11 was the record for the under for the NCAA tournament. I got to remember that for next time.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Casey, because I was looking at a chart of the three-point shooting in the NCAA tournament over the last few years and how it's consistently gone down and down and down. And then I look at Xavier's performance on Friday. They were 2 for 12 from three. Shot it better yesterday, but that was mostly because Adam Kunkel started 5 for 5. The rest of the team only made 3 threes. I think it's interesting looking at the tournament as a whole and just seeing what they do and don't do with scoring. And it has also felt like the tournament has been officiated a whole lot differently than it was in the regular season. Chris Mack tweeted about that yesterday with kind of the freedom of movement. It feels more physical, and things are getting called, things aren't getting called. It feels like it's been officiated a little differently than the regular season. But yes, to your point about the unders, yes, that you're spot on.
Yeah, and I was also looking at my bracket, which was funny. No one is currently losing to the wheel. If you follow Box Lunch and that show, we did a wheel bracket, and it was actually doing quite well at first. Now it's back down to the bottom, but it's got Xavier going all the way.
Just laugh out loud hilarious that we spent 20 minutes doing that and wound up with Xavier.
Yeah, and the fact that it's actually not like completely out, like it's actually got a chance to upset people in our own.
I mean, if Xavier was to win the national championship, that bracket would come in second place.
Yeah,
behind Mouse Scout.
Yeah, and I don't plan.
It was hilarious. Did you tell him what we did?
No, I don't think I've told him what we did.
So on Box Lunch on Wednesday afternoon, Reed came in here and we did that wheel. That wheel that we do?
Yep.
We spun the wheel for all 63 games in the tournament. So we made a bracket from the tournament just from the wheel, and we just said favorite or underdog by seed. It picked Xavier to win the national championship. No joke. You can go back and watch it on YouTube.
Kidding. How about that?
It spun 63 times. Poor Casey sat here and spun that wheel. And it spun Fairleigh Dickinson, and it spun Xavier. And outside of that, it's in last place in the group.
Here, I'll just pull it up right now since we're about to talk about it anyways.
It is kind of funny.
This is the results of the wheel.
This is the wheel.
So who's in the championship game?
It's Xavier. Was that Furman they were supposed to play?
Yeah.
It had the Furman upset.
Furman and Montana State were the Final Four on the east and the south side.
Yeah.
And then it has Xavier and St. Mary's. So St. Mary's is gone. But if you look at this, if Xavier makes it all the way, if they beat Texas, I think a lot of people are going to start getting a little nervous about this game because – I mean, there's no way that they can make it any further on this side, on the Gonzaga side, I guess.
Yeah. No, it just is. It is funny.
FAU.
Completely random.
I mean, they could upset Tennessee if you ask me. And then, yeah, I think they lost out on the other side. So really, it's just Xavier. If Xavier makes it, to the Final Four at all, people are going to start sweating bullets over this bracket here. And I just find it absolutely hilarious because I got Texas in my Final Four, and I only have 2 teams left. So as much as I want Xavier to win, I also don't want to lose the wheel.
The wheel.
So I'm in a bit of a dilemma here, Tom. A huge dilemma.
It's all right, Casey. A lot of people would lose to the wheel. So
you got that right. A lot of people. I mean, it harkens back to what we talked about last week where you could get your 10-year-old daughter to pick the tournament based on her favorite mascots, and you might come out better than some of us do on this tournament. Especially this year. So you have, Paul, 8 teams left in the Sweet 16.
I have 8 of the 16, yeah.
I have 7. Casey, how many do you have?
I have 8 as well.
8 as well. Okay. All right, so where do we want to start? First I want to just get overall, Paul, your impressions. I have a number of questions for you that a lot of Xavier fans are wondering about. I want to hear your impressions of the 2 games for your Xavier Musketeers, starting with Kennesaw State. There are 2 guys in a hospital from the last 5 seconds of that game, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, come on. Anybody who watches that.
I went back. I saw that comment.
Dude, first guy got killed on the arm. And then when the ball was deflected, the next guy got killed on the arm. Now, I'm not saying you blow whistles the last 5 seconds. I'm not saying that they would have won, because I give it up for Xavier. They were down. They came storming back. I'm the only guy around here who talks up Kunkel. I'm not saying you beat him. I didn't say you. But there are other guys around here. All they do is kill Kunkel. And I've been saying all along, the guy is a gamer. He is tough. He plays with passion. He plays with fire. I love the guy. I love watching that more than any Xavier player they have. And I know some of you are throwing stuff at your computer screens right now because he is a hot rod guy, right?
He is. I love Kunkel.
Guy's a gamer.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, absolutely.
He hit the biggest shot of the year.
Yes.
That three.
I mean, Xavier probably doesn't win if he doesn't make that three. So, yes. Yeah.
All right, let's start real quick and back up for a minute because they brushed it off after. So I want to start with the Kennesaw State game. That exchange that the whole world saw on television between Sule Boom and Kunkel.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I think it was just two guys that got down to the end of their college. Those are the only two guys on the team that can't come back next year. So those are the only two guys that understand that their college careers are for sure coming to a close, and it was a spirit of competition. And they walked in the locker room after, and they were sitting there on their phones, and both of them were watching it, laughing with each other on their phones when you walked in the room. So I don't read too much into it. I think it was two guys being competitive.
You know what's funny is I went to a bar, the Barrel House here in Lebanon, and with my dad, and I'm sitting there eating this jalapeno burger. The first thing I thought of was, ooh, spicy, as I'm eating that. This is getting a little hot in here. Two teammates,
Yeah.
with fiery passion. I love it, honestly.
Yep.
Not that you asked my opinion. I like the fact that they got in each other's face and were trying to get each other to get ready for the next half. So
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't see it happen. As soon as the whistle blows for these media timeouts, I go right back down into my computer to kind of figure out what happened in the last 4 minutes with the stats and everything. So I looked down as soon as they blew the whistle because I knew it was going to a media. And as they were walking back to the huddle, that was when it happened. And there was somebody sitting right behind the bench that sent me a text and goes, "Did you see what just happened with Adam and Sule?" I said, I didn't see a thing. I'll be honest. I was looking down. Man, Reed Mouse doubling down.
Oh, my God.
Saved the season, Tom. He saved the season.
How can a guy in Reed Mouse be a Xavier fan, which he is, legitimate Xavier fan,
Yeah.
and post that in our chat?
I don't know.
Kunkel does not stink. Kunkel is an asset to that team in many, many ways. You're around this team,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
you hear he's a lightning rod player for the fan base. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, he is a very fiery guy. He's a very vocal guy, and he's also somebody that you talk about as somebody that could be a coach someday when
Yes,
you talk about
no doubt.
And I think that is also part of it maybe with Sule, where Adam is so vocal. He's so overly vocal and talking and communicating and everything that maybe there was a miscommunication there, whether it was a defensive assignment, offensive assignment. I don't know what it was exactly. I didn't get the whole story, but either way, there was something there that was a miscommunication that ended up turning into what it turned into. I think it was okay. I don't think it was anything huge. But yeah, I mean, for Xavier to be down by 13 in the second half of that game, I did not think when it got down to about 10 minutes to go, which is when Xavier went on their run, when it was down into single digits on the clock and Xavier was still down 13, there was I think it was 9:58 left on the clock, and KSU made a layup to go back up 13. And I sat there and I thought to myself, Xavier might be out of time here because they were trading threes and they were trading twos and they weren't getting stops. And I made the comment to Adam Baum, who was sitting to my left. I said, hey, look, they are running out of possessions here to come back and win this game. Forget being able to score, because at that point Xavier only had 48 points in the game. They're just running out of time. And then finally from there, I mean, they outscored Kennesaw State, 25 or 27 to 5 the rest of the way or whatever it was. And, it was funny coming down to the very end. It's 18 seconds left. KSU has the ball. We've talked so much about Xavier's defensive effort this year, and the game came down to a defensive stop, and Jack Nunge slides over from the opposite block, gets a clean block, and saves the game, saves the season. Xavier goes on and blows out Pitt. And it kind of felt like that was how it was trending, that Xavier was going to win. If Xavier was able to hold on in that game, they'd get that game behind them, get a win under their belt, and they'd move on and have less pressure, and that's what it felt like.
All right, now yesterday. No. All right, well, yeah, let's stay with yesterday for a minute. I mean, they just tore Pitt apart. And, I mean, this was a Xavier game where they got back in a little different way to looking like Xavier offensively. 6 guys in double figures, right?
Yeah.
Colby Jones, double-double. Nunge scores 18. Nunge's played well in the tournament. There's no doubt about it.
Yep.
He is a solid big man. Solid player. And better than most big men, truth be told, that are out there and that are still left in the tournament. He may not be Zach Edey, but he's pretty damn good.
Well, Zach Edey's out.
Yes, he is. But, I mean, yesterday, though, that was Sean Miller, Xavier basketball yesterday. Is that fair to say?
Oh, it absolutely was. It was the epitome of what Xavier has done well this year. I know they didn't make a field goal in the last 6 minutes, and it got a little dicey. But yesterday against Pitt was the absolute epitome, for lack of a better word, of Xavier basketball this year and what it looks like when Xavier plays well. They were assisting on almost every field goal. They were shooting the ball well, especially Adam Kunkel in the first half, but that goes back to finding the open shooter and finding the hot guy. They did. It was overall a surgical performance in the first half, and then they didn't take their foot off the gas in the second half until the end, but they were even still able to just take the air out of the ball. And sort of like what I thought might happen on Friday with Xavier, Pitt ran out of time. But at the same point, it wasn't like Pitt came back and Xavier won by 2 or 3 and didn't cover. Xavier still ended up winning by double digits, even though they didn't make a field goal for the last 6+ minutes of the game. And I think that's a statement to how well Xavier started, how well they started the second half as well. All of those things combined, they did a really good job of going out there, putting a game plan together, executing the game plan. Dante Jack, usually in a game like that, or in any game, doesn't matter, NCAA tournament, wherever, it's an assistant coach's job to do what they call the scout, which is you're putting the game plan together for the game. And it was Dante Jackson, the assistant coach for Xavier. It was his scout for the Pitt game to scout Pitt and put that game plan together yesterday. Obviously, the head coach, Sean Miller, and the head coaches around college basketball, they have input in everything. But one assistant coach gets assigned to the game, and it's their game more so than anybody else's. Dante Jackson is somebody that had played Pitt in the NCAA tournament in his career. This game meant a lot to him. Not that it didn't mean any more to the assistant coaches, but you knew. I think I knew when I found out the night before that it was Dante's scout for that Pitt game that I felt pretty good about Xavier's chances. This assistant coaching staff, Adam Cohen, is somebody that's been rumored to be in the running for the Buffalo head coaching job, which is a great job at the mid-major level. David Miller has been a phenomenal head assistant coach for Xavier this year. He's the son of Dave Miller, who's been an assistant coach in the NBA. So there are a lot of ties to this program this year and the coaching staff, and then, of course, Sean at the top. But I just can't get over the fact, Tom, that 1 year ago, exactly yesterday, 1 year ago, was the day that Xavier hired Sean to be the head coach. And all it took was a year to get back to that point and to get to a point where you are now competing for a Final Four. I mean, that is an incredible accomplishment. And it was so weird last year thinking back to the NIT and to the way that season ended, winning the NIT, now coming back and making the Sweet 16. And teams stayed together. They lost DeJuan Odom last year, but outside of that, nobody else transferred. Bring everybody back, you get a point guard. Now you're in the Sweet 16.
Well, the player that changed it all for Miller this year is without a doubt Boone.
Yes.
Now, having said that, we always talk about pressure, and we talk about playing in these games, and I think we both would agree, even the most ardent Xavier fan would agree. Their first 2 games have not been exactly against juggernaut opponents here. I mean, Kennesaw State, is Kennesaw State. They won a nice game in the first round. I mean, it played a nice game in the first round against Xavier, no doubt about it. The coach was unbelievable after the game.
He was.
I would send my kid to play for that dude all day, every day. I mean, amazing, that guy's interview, and he was just fantastic. But then you play Pitt. I mean, Pitt was not very good all year long. They were in the first four. God bless them. They won that game. Then they won a game over Iowa State, who played very badly in that game. But Kennesaw State and Pitt, they are what they are. But you have to go beat those teams. And there are some other teams that did not go do that, the Purdue's of the world, et cetera, et cetera. Souley Boum has been brutal. And that's the only way to describe it in the first two games. He's 8 for 26 from the field. He's only made 2 3-pointers total in the two games combined. Now, there are two ways of looking at that, of course. One is your best player did not do anything the first two games of the tournament, and you won both games. The flip side is, are we going any further now that we're playing real teams, and Texas is a real team? Are you going anywhere if Boum can't get it together?
Well, I do think there is the flip side argument to be made that he didn't shoot the ball well from the field. He was 1 for 7 from 3, but he was also 7 for 8 from the foul line in massive spots where it mattered, and Xavier's been able to rely on him at the free throw line all year. He also pulled down 7 rebounds. He had 5 assists, and he only had 1 turnover. So he didn't shoot the ball well.
Well, but I'm talking about you and I both have to agree on the fact that if Boum can't score, they're not going to beat a real team. Kennesaw and Pitt aren't real teams. And again, that's not taking anything away from the fact that X is in the Sweet 16. What you just said is spot on. They brought in a big-time coach. Clearly the dividends have paid off. Now they're playing this week with a chance to go to the Elite Eight and maybe the Final Four after the weekend is said and done. But they are not going to beat Texas if Souley Boum again goes out there and gets 1 field goal.
Yeah, they're going to need more offensive production from him. I do agree with that. They're going to need more offensive production from the field from him because they're going to have to keep Texas's defense honest. I mean, look, this is a Texas team that in general is last night I was driving home and I was doing I was on a Xavier space after the game and I was kind of thinking about it. The more I've looked at it, the more I'm not necessarily going to go so far maybe to say that it's a complete nightmare that I called it last night. That Texas matchup. But look, this is a team that's 15th in the country offensively and 10th defensively. They are a well-balanced team that won the Big 12 tournament by 20 points in the championship game over Kansas. They only had 1 loss, in the non-conference schedule. They had that crazy loss to Kansas State back in January. But other than that, I mean, they've lost to Baylor and TCU, but they don't have a loss outside of the top 60 in KenPom. And they only have 1 loss outside the top 33 in KenPom. That was Texas Tech. They lost by 7, but that was an away game. It's going to be a neutral court in Kansas City. Xavier's going to absolutely have to play their A game for 80 minutes here because if you beat Texas, which I do think they can do.
Yep.
I don't think that this is some insurmountable task.
No, definitely not. I'm with you.
Because again, to your point about these Big 12 teams and sometimes laying eggs this year, I mean, Texas did lose to Texas Tech. I know that was an away game and an emotional game, and there were some other factors, in there like that. But they did lose to Texas Tech, who is one of the worst teams in the Big 12. Granted, still a top 60 team. But this is not Xavier playing 2021 Gonzaga or 2021 Baylor.
Right.
That would, these crazy teams that are just over everybody else. But this is the best team by Kentucky and Purdue, and then throw in Michigan State or Marquette into a regional final. Oh my God, that would have been
no doubt
pure electricity for 3 straight days. And I mean, look, that's just how the tournament shakes out. Now
that's right.
Florida Atlantic, Michigan State, Tennessee, and who's the other one? I'm blanking. Who's the 4th? Florida Atlantic, Tennessee.
Florida Atlantic, Tennessee.
Who's Michigan State?
Kansas State.
Kansas State.
Boy, now there is a team flying under the radar, and they look pretty good. They're pretty good.
Well, Jerome Tang, to steal a phrase from you, he's had it going all year.
He's had it going. All right, Casey, do we have this or no? Your
Yeah,
tired bracket?
Yeah, we got it.
All right, well, let's get it up there. All right, so let's see here, Casey. Walk us through here just, quickly in a broad sense who we have here and where things have gone well, where they've gone astray.
I picked the wrong spot, just kind of like what Paul said earlier on in the show. I picked Charleston instead of Furman, and that kind of hurt that side of the bracket a little bit. Really loved Huggy Bear in that game. I thought that game was close enough. It could have gone either way, but then Alabama just smokes. I think everyone consensus has them going into the Final Four. Creighton, that was kind of a last-minute decision. I actually had Baylor, but Paul really convinced me, and the Ken Pom statistically just has them as a better team, and Baylor being so consistent as of late. Great for me.
Wait a minute. Is this your bracket that's up there?
Yeah, this is mine.
You had Princeton going to the Sweet Six?
No, the team underneath that the team that you see, you got to look at the little tiny text that's underneath of it. That's tough to see.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Well,
anyway,
regardless, I didn't have
Princeton.
Oh,
I see what you're
Arizona.
saying. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. All right.
I picked Arizona too.
Yes, I got you. Okay. All right. So for people at home, that's what we're looking at here.
Yeah.
So you had obviously Alabama, you had San Diego State, you had Creighton, or did you have? Yeah, you had Creighton, and then you had Arizona.
Yeah.
Which everybody had Arizona.
Yeah.
I think.
That side of the bracket really hasn't been too rough, except for the early stages. The Furman and Charleston.
Yeah, old news there. All right.
I definitely handicapped myself picking NKU. That just meant that Houston going all the way to the Sweet 16 here, and
then you went with
tough.
Drake and Kent State. I mean, you completely laid an egg on all those.
Yeah, that entire part of the bracket just busted. But luckily for me, Xavier has done well. Penn State did well. Texas won.
Yep.
I have Texas going to the Final Four, but we'll see. I'm hopeful that Xavier can get it done. I don't care about my bracket that much.
Okay, I'm just going to say mine. We'll put Paul's up in a second. I had over there Alabama against Virginia. We know Virginia laid an egg. And I had Baylor against Arizona. So the only team I have left on that side is Alabama. I have them winning the whole thing. On the other side, I did have Houston. I did have Miami. Scroll that back up a second.
That's up.
I can't see the big screen, but scroll that back up. Oh, okay. I did not have Xavier. I had Iowa State playing Texas, and I eventually have a Houston moving on to the Final Four. So those are two Final Four teams I still have alive. All right. So now we go to the bottom half, Casey, of your bracket.
Yeah, and I couldn't pull the trigger on Purdue being upset in the first round, but I did have them losing in the 32. It just didn't pick the right team to upset them.
Yeah, I hear you.
Memphis FAU game, that was actually an underrated game in my opinion. That was a pretty good game.
Yep.
Awesome game.
It was an awesome game. All the way till the end, honestly. FAU, though, has been really impressive to me. I'm very excited to see them against Tennessee. And I of course, picked Duke. That was a very popular pick.
Yep.
They stood no chance against Tennessee, though. That was tough. That was a tough one to watch. Kentucky, Kansas State. That was a really fun game to watch. I had Kansas State. It was very fun watching initially just the comeback, honestly, because Kentucky had a pretty firm hold, in my opinion, in most of that game. Oscar Tshiebwe was incredible.
Oh.
But Kansas State, they just pulled away. And the game that I'm most surprised with out of everything in this was just the Kansas-Arkansas game. That one really hurt. I had them in the final, so I'm already looking really rough for my final prediction. I still think Alabama wins it, but you want those points if you can get those in the bracket tournament. But other than that, I picked everything else correctly on that side of the bracket. UConn, Gonzaga, UCLA. I don't know if that was super hard to pick those teams, but in the end, I have Gonzaga winning against UCLA, and I had Kansas. But if I were to pick now between UConn and Arkansas, I'm going to pick UConn, and I'm going to have Gonzaga go to the Final Four. I should have done that for all these. Right now, if I were to pick on the other side, I have Kansas State making it to the Final Four, Alabama, of course, and then on this side, I'm still going to pick Texas. I just think Houston, I don't care what I saw on that Auburn game. I don't believe much of them. If they run across a team that's super defensive, we all better watch out.
Yep.
Well, again, I'll just give mine. I'm blown out of the bracket on the left side. I'm completely done in the East. I had Duke, Kentucky playing, so I'm DUN there, but I am red hot, 4 for 4 on the other side.
All right.
No, I beg your pardon. No, I'm 3 out of 4 on the other side. I did not have Arkansas. I had Kansas, UConn, Gonzaga, UCLA. Right. I want to get back to Duke for a minute because if anybody watched that game, and that was one of the games that after they got through the first round, that was one of the ones I can't sit down. I don't know about some of you. I mean, I can't sit there all day long and watch. I just can't do it because there's some games I care about. Like yesterday, I kind of cared about those first 3 games. And then that first 2 games, really. And then after that, I didn't care again until late at night, the TCU game. And I can't stay up that late getting up as early as I do. So I only watch till halftime. But, you know, when you look at a program like Duke, since 2010, Duke has only been to 2 Final Fours. One of them was last year, in Mike Krzyzewski's last year, when they got beat by North Carolina in the national semis. 2010. They've only been to 2 Final Fours. I would make the case a big reason for that is because they're soft. They have these guys like their big man. He's a hell of a player.
Filipowski?
Yeah, but I mean, look, and I know that for these young men, the goal is to go from college to the NBA and make a lot of money for your families, and that's all fine. I'm all on board with all of that, just like I would if it was my kid or if you would for your kid. But when I'm assembling a college basketball team, if I want to make a run in the tournament, now there are extremes, okay? I think you can have too many guys that are like football players and not really great basketball players, right? I think that Purdue and Michigan State and teams like that, I think that they need to maybe change Painter at Purdue. He's got to start thinking about what is it that we're missing? What kind of player are we not recruiting? Okay? And for them, their guard plays terrible. They couldn't handle good pressure. They had Edey in the middle, one of the best players in the country, no doubt about it. But as good as they were this year, and I watched them in the Big Ten tournament, I thought to myself, who's going to beat these guys? Until I saw all of a sudden teams start putting pressure on them, on their guards. And then you're like, ooh, red flag, red flag. But Duke, to only go, and it's hard to get to the Final Four. Look, it's really hard. But for Duke to only get to 2 Final Fours in the last 13 years, they're big guys shooting threes, and I know that's what the NBA game has become, 6'9", 6'10", 7-foot guys that can shoot the three and all that kind of thing. But, man, that Tennessee team, they just mauled Duke. Duke wanted nothing to do with that team. Am I right or wrong on this?
That's what I was listening to it. That's what it sounded like. It's absolutely what it sounded like.
I mean, they just mauled this team.
Yeah.
Their defense, their toughness, their rebounding, their drive, their will. I mean, look, you know, Duke and Kansas, North Carolina. I mean, we're talking about schools. You talk about the blue blood of the blue, but Kentucky. Every guy they get's a 4- and 5-star guy. Every guy they get, right, by and large. They're 4- or 5-star recruit everybody in the country wants, right?
Yeah.
And yet, we were debating on this topic Trace was saying about he doesn't know if Michigan State's a blue blood. Well, here they are again. Here they are again. And then I look at, of the quote-unquote blue bloods that are left out there, there's only one left, in my opinion, that's a true blue blood. I mean, you can debate. Michigan State, I put them in there, and that's UCLA. Now, you could say Gonzaga is. They haven't been there in the long haul. Which, by the way, I got to tell you, Mark Few, I mean, great coach. Great coach. But I got to tell you, when you watch his interviews, he is nothing like the rest of the guys are. 99% of these guys have been fantastic. Whether it's in-game or post-game after a win, whether it's Sean Miller, whether it's Kelvin Sampson, whether it's Cal, whether it's any of them. Few, just cranky, and he's had that reputation for a long time. That's a hard team to root for, Gonzaga. I can't root for him. And I was there when they had the first ever run to the Sweet 16 in Phoenix, Arizona. I was at the game in that regional semifinal and final. The crowd, never seen anything like it. The Gonzaga fans, and they travel great, man. I mean, man, do they travel.
You put a game east or west of the Mississippi,
yeah.
Gonzaga fans are selling that place out.
No doubt. They're unbelievable. But Few's cranky. He gets tired. And after watching them, and they played pretty well against TCU, watch the first half, went back and watched a little bit of the highlights and stuff this morning. Just based on watching those two teams, and I'm sure I'll be wrong as I've been the rest of the tournament, I think UCLA is going to blow them out of the gym. UCLA is good.
Yeah, they are very good. And they've grown on me as the season has gone along. UCLA has. I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I wouldn't be shocked either way with the result of this game. I lean Gonzaga, but I haven't also done I haven't gone in, done a huge deep dive, kind of just a first impression of it. I kind of lean Gonzaga, though, in a matchup like that. They have a lot of experienced guys. Not that UCLA doesn't either, because you look at a guy like Tiger Campbell, Jaime Jaquez. I mean, you talk about some guys that have been around the block.
Yep.
Have played in some big-time games.
No doubt.
I do see Sir Boy Wonder reporting via John Fanta that, barring a last-minute change of heart, Ed Cooley is going to take the Georgetown job.
Okay, now I want you to expand on your theory here, which you were the one who said this before the show ever got started today, that you thought Cooley was going for sure to Georgetown.
Yeah. So I have a conspiracy theory here, and I don't really have anything to back this up. I've just been kind of doing some thinking on it. I did fully expect Ed to take this job by the end of the day today, and like Fanta says, it looks like that's going to happen. So that opens up Providence. Well, Tom.
Oh, boy.
Let me ask you a question.
Here
Tom.
we go.
I got a question.
Here we go.
Got a question for you, Tom.
Yes, sir.
There's a name out there right now.
Yep.
A pretty big name, I'd say, in college basketball.
I would say you're probably right.
In fact, Tom, I think you would probably agree with me that this name that I'm going to say might be one of the greatest coaches, if not a top 3, you said in the monologue, 5 head coach of all time.
Well, I mean, pro, college, whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
The results are what they are. And you are talking about?
Rick Pitino.
Okay.
Is Rick Pitino, and I'm just throwing this out there, I say there's a 5% chance that it happens, but it's non-zero. Is there a chance that Rick Pitino is slow playing this St. John's thing because he wants to go back to Providence? It's like the old Matthew McConaughey ad. Sometimes you got to go back to go forward.
Yep.
Maybe Rick Pitino is slow playing this St. John's thing. Now, for all intents and purposes, it does seem like Rick Pitino to St. John's is happening. That's been reported for a while. It's also been reported that it's been in the works for a while, even before that. I think I've seen that somewhere. I could be wrong, but I think I've seen that somewhere, that's been in the works for a long time. Would not shock me. Also just saw that Mike Anderson is going to sue St. John's over his firing there. I don't know what that would, or what grounds he would have to that. I didn't read the story. I just saw the headline. But maybe there is a world here where Rick Pitino Because look, St. John's has facility issues. Carnesecca Arena is not an elite level arena in the Big East. But you know what is Madison Square Garden. But the flip side of Madison Square Garden is St. John's has to re-up their deal with MSG to play their home games there. If they can't do that, which I'm sure is part of it, if they can't do that, maybe, just maybe. I do think there is a 99% chance that Rick Pitino will be in the Big East next year.
All right, well, let me ask you about a couple of these things because it's been pointed out here in the chat, and I don't know. I've never been there, so you tell me. Someone says Providence is just a miserable town.
That I don't know. I've never been to Providence.
Okay, well, I mean, I've heard that before, but Ed Cooley is a Providence guy.
He is.
He's born and raised guy there. I mean, he loves it there, and what a great dude. I mean, I love that guy. I've talked about him before. He's an awesome guy. Why? Because you do know the Big East, why is Georgetown a better job theoretically than Providence?
Well,
money? Is it all money or is it recruiting? I mean, what is it?
Not necessarily money for Cooley, although I do think he'll get paid a little more. I don't think money is necessarily the issue as far as like a contract goes, because I think Cooley, when you're talking about $4 or $5.5 million, which is basically the difference in the initial contracts that I had heard or had seen reported, I think that I had heard of some, whether it's NIL or just some things like that Cooley was looking for some more support from Providence as far as NIL or some of that goes, and he felt like he had a higher ceiling at Georgetown in that. Because if you get Georgetown back to national prominence, those donors and those people at Georgetown are going to come flocking. They have the highest endowment in the Big East, one of the highest endowments.
Yeah, a lot of big money people come out of there.
Yeah, so
yep.
If you get to a point where you're starting to, it's hard to sell out the Capital One Arena for Georgetown basketball, but if you get to a point where you are putting Georgetown on the map again and you're consistently making NCAA tournaments, you're competing for Big East titles, all of those things, the donors are going to flock to the Hoyas, and that is something that Ed Cooley would jump at the chance to do. I'm just shocked that he's leaving his hometown. This is going to be a situation now where he has to play Providence twice a year, maybe 3 times if they meet in the Big East tournament. And he is going to be going from being the guy in his hometown, the guy, to now going down to Georgetown in the same conference and having to go back and play them in Providence once a year.
I got to tell you, and I know a little bit about what I'm talking about here. And I had a wise man once say to me a long time ago when I was thinking about leaving Arizona to come to Cincinnati. Your hometown, there are a lot of great things about it, and then there are some things that you don't think about that all of a sudden once you get back there, it's not – and I don't mean this in a negative way. There are things that come up that you never thought of. And sometimes you just have to get out. And Cooley has obviously reached that point in time. It's time to leave. And at the end of the day, when he gets to be an old man – he's still going to be loved and revered in Providence, Rhode Island. He is a Providence guy. He might come in there 2 times or 1 time a year, get booed. That's fine. You move on. The people who know you know you. They know what you're all about. He's done a phenomenal job there at Providence. But Georgetown, the name, the history, all that kind of thing, it's Georgetown. Pitino just seems like the natural fit for me in New York City. He's been there.
Yeah.
Right? He's been there. Pro coach. He's a New York, kind of guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, you didn't say that right. New York kind of guy.
Guy. In New York guy. Jerry Narron used to say, glue guy. Rich or realer. A glue guy. Nobody can do that imitation better than Jim Day. We got to get him on the air one day. All right. Now, Paul, let's get your picks up there.
Well, one last thing before you put this up there. You are spot on with the Rick Pitino, New York. He lives on Wingfoot, the golf course.
That's in New York.
Yeah.
Only a guy like you would know that, but okay, go ahead.
He lives.
You mean to tell me Rick Pitino lives year-round in New York? He doesn't get out of the cold?
I read a long, in-depth article Matt Norlander wrote on Pitino and why St. John's. Basically, if you read between the lines of the article,
right,
it is why St. John's is a good fit for him. He wouldn't have to move. He loves living on Wingfoot. Gets to stay there. I don't know. We'll see.
Brian is just killing people on this thing today. He's killed Cal, and now he's killing Mick Cronin. What did Mick Cronin ever do to tick anybody off around here?
Didn't win the big one.
Well, okay. All right.
I mean, I'm just answering the question.
All right. Well, let me ask you right now, okay? At the end of the day, would you like to have Mick Cronin still here?
I think it's yes.
I mean, come on.
Yes.
And that's not saying anything bad about Brandon or anything bad about Wes Miller. God bless them both. But come on. The last 9 years Mick was here, they went to the tournament. I mean, come on. Brian, come on. I mean, come on. He says, speaking of Mick Cronin, somebody please take out UCLA. And Mouse Cop is saying, go Brian. I mean, okay. All right. So, all right, let's see your bracket, Paul. We'll take a timeout, and then we're going to shift gears over to some NFL stuff today because there's a lot going on. Did I see the Bengals have brought back Max Sharping? I'd forgotten that name. Did they re-sign him today?
I saw that.
Was that today?
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden they've got about 800 offensive linemen in that room.
Hey.
Can't have enough.
Can't have enough.
All right, we'll get to that in a minute. Mouse Cop says, I'm in your head, Tom. You're living rent-free there, Mouse Cop. All right, go ahead.
Oh, bracket?
Let's see it. I mean, tell us who you got here. Let's go. Let's see how you did. You got 8 teams left.
All right. So I have 8 of the Sweet 16 left. Here it is. Still have Houston in as my national champion. I had Creighton into the Sweet 16 here. It's funny. We were talking about it before the show. We had the right idea when we were talking about the Charleston and the Furman games. We had the right idea. But it picked the wrong side, and San Diego State ended up getting in. Furman was the one that won, but if you go back and listen, we said one of the 12 or 13 in there was going to win, and it was Furman that ended up winning, not Charleston. San Diego State to the Sweet 16. Arizona, man, I told everybody, bound and determined to pick them 2 or 3 rounds too far, and I picked them 3 rounds too far. They get burnt in the first game.
Yes, they did.
On the right side of the bracket, Houston survives Northern Kentucky. North should have won that game. North absolutely should have won that game. Casey, I was rooting for you hard. We all were. Auburn, good win there. That was in their backyard. Totally botched the Drake and Miami thing there. I had Indiana moving on, but I didn't think Miami would get past them. I thought Indiana would beat Drake. Doesn't matter anyway. Houston and Xavier there in the Sweet 16 or in the Elite 8.
Right.
I thought Texas would lose to Texas A&M. Penn State gave them a run, but couldn't get it done. Texas A&M got blown out, man. What a bad performance there. Colgate didn't give Texas as much of a run as I thought they would, although it was a 9-point game at half. Now it's Xavier and Texas on a week of preparation. All right, let's scroll to the bottom here.
Yep.
And in the bottom left bracket, I botched Marquette. I guess I overvalued Marquette or I undervalued Michigan State. I did terribly down there. Everybody's out. Bottom left bracket's a complete wash. Got Kentucky and Tennessee right. That's about it. And then in the bottom right, we're cruising, except that it's chalk, so it wasn't all that hard to pick.
Yeah.
UConn, Gonzaga to the Elite 8, and Gonzaga winning that game. We'll see. Does UConn have the chops? Do they finally get to the Elite 8 under Dan Hurley? I mean, they won a game for the first time under Dan Hurley in the NCAA tournament. So that's the bracket.
Final 4? Final? Want to talk about
How many you have left? You have 3 of the 4, right?
3 of the 4.
Me too. You got 3 of the 4, right, Casey? 2 of the 4.
2 of the 4.
2 of the 4. Okay.
2 of the 4.
Okay. I have UCLA, Houston, Alabama. Who do you have, Paul? Gonzaga?
Houston, Gonzaga, and Alabama.
Okay. And Casey, your 2 are?
Texas and Alabama.
Texas and Alabama. Alabama and Houston seem to be flying really low under the radar. And that's because they just don't bring a big prominent name to the party, right? I mean, they've had good teams in the past. I'm not saying that. But, Brandon Miller, the first game, they scored 96. He doesn't score a point. He's got an injury. Sasser has to leave the first game, doesn't play the second half. Then all of a sudden, Sasser comes back and looks great the other day. Houston looked like Houston the other day. If Sasser's healthy, I would have changed my pick for a national champion and think that Houston's going to win the whole thing. But I can't do that at this point. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're talking some football. So, Casey, you better be on your game.
Football.
Of course, Tom.
The National Football League. Ham and Eggers. Here we go.
All right.
Petito.
So when we come back, we'll be talking Bengals. Casey, you know what that means.
I do know what that means.
It means it's going to be time for the Bengals Report, which is brought to you by Encore Technologies. Encore Technologies provides IT solutions for a data-centered world with a suite of services from mobile computing to desktop to data center, supporting both centralized and work from home. Good Lord. Work from home computing models to improve efficiency and
productivity.
Oh, we still got it, Casey. Visit encore.tech. The path to innovation begins here. There is also a new premium alkaline water, and it is right in front of us. Casey and I both have one. Pawnee. Made in Hamilton, Ohio, Pawnee uses natural limestone filtration, unlike the artificial processing that many other brands use. The result is a healthy alkaline water that is also the best tasting water in the world. Visit their website at pawneewater.com. That's PAHHNI water.com to see where you can buy this great tasting water.
You know what would make that segment just a little bit more spicy?
What would
During the Pawnee water? We have to chug a Pawnee water before you finish that whole entire ad read.
I could read real slow. I'm pretty good at chugging water.
I'm not very good at chugging, so I would probably lose every time. But it would be great when I win one.
It'd be fantastic content.
It would be.
I'll just one of these days I'll just read it real slow. Just ease into it real slow. Yeah. So get your technology solutions from Encore.tech. Drink Pawnee water. Get your coffee from UDF. Bet with Betfred. I have all the Betfred lines down there at the bottom. Got still 2 weekends of college basketball left. It's not over yet. Xavier plus 650 to win their next 2 games. All right. We have Paul's a big water chugger. I can put it down. I don't drink a lot of water, though. I should drink more water. I should drink more Pawnee water.
I used to drink too much water, I feel like.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm just not
my parents would buy like a 64-pack of bottled water, and I'd drink it in like 3 days.
Yeah. Pawnee water here in the office is about the only time I
drink water.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to get to that point for me, too.
Got to change that, boys. You got to drink a lot of water.
Yeah,
it's lot.
Important.
It's very important. Very good for you. Can wash out a lot of the bad stuff that both of you guys partake in.
It's true.
On a regular basis.
Degenerates. All right, Casey, when I left you on Wednesday, I checked in on Thursday or Friday's show, but when I left you on Wednesday, I asked you a question. And I said, how much equity has the Bengals front office built up to do the right thing? Because at that point, when I was in studio, the Bengals had not made a significant move yet in free agency. Guys had left. Now I'm sitting there on my phone. I had checked into my hotel room. The Wi-Fi wasn't working. Had to call the support center. It was a disaster scene. I look down at my phone and I see Orlando Brown signs with the Bengals. I said, well, first off, I see all these texts from everybody in all caps, and I'm going, something happened? I'm going, what happened here? What's going on?
Well, tell him where you went on the because the last time Paul was around. And
I listened to the live shows, so I know that on the scale we're feeling pretty good.
Well, for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, new to the show, most of you are not new to the show, but we had asked Casey before the Orlando Brown signing when Von Bell walked out the door, Jesse Bates walked out the door, Hayden Hurst walked out the door, Samaj Piran walks out the door, blah, blah, blah. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the lightest, 10 being the darkest of where he was on the Bengals, you were at a 7.5. You were bordering on an Aaron Rodgers-like darkness retreat. And then with one single signing, you all of a sudden got down into the ones.
Yeah, mainly because so let me make it more realistic. I'm going to say 2.
Okay,
I'm
that's
at a
fair.
2. I'm at a 2. And that's mainly because they still haven't addressed tight end. They had a guy visit Foster Moreau, and he did not leave with contract. That worried me a little bit because there's not very many good options left. I'm not a fan of Irv Smith. His injury history is not great. You're risking a guy not even playing this year and him being your starter. Although more and more it looks like they're going to spend that first-round pick on a tight end because they just haven't addressed it yet. But regardless, addressing the left tackle spot when they didn't need to me, says a lot about how they feel about protecting Joe Burrow is the number one priority. I mean, they didn't have to go get Orlando Brown. They could have easily just gotten Jermaine Elmure for 3 years and $20 million and just been okay with that and gotten a stopgap guy. No, they said we're going to improve where we think we can improve at. Left tackle is a spot where they said we don't have anything long-term secured there. Jonah has not really produced at a high enough level to where we think that bringing in Orlando Brown Jr. makes sense. And it was a great signing, too. It puts him at the 18th highest paid tackle in the league, which is a great deal for the Bengals. And not to mention that they front-loaded it and they put it in with a bunch of signing bonus cash that doesn't affect our cap too much. Not to mention that there's still a potential for this Bengals team to have a ton of cap space. They could easily trade away Jonah for pennies. I still think that's what they should do.
Well, Ian Rappaport reported Friday.
Yep.
He was the first guy to come out and say that I've heard. Maybe some of you have heard different. Where he said a deal for Williams could happen sooner rather than later. He said it's hard to see them getting more than a third-round pick because of the fact, of course, that Williams is in the final year of a deal. He's making $12.5 million, 12.6 to be exact. And there aren't a lot of teams out there that can handle that kind of hit in regard to cap space. But he said there are a few. And he said there also aren't a lot of teams looking for a left tackle. I can't tell you. And I don't know. He might be the nicest guy in the world. I know that Frank Pollock tried to talk him out of it over the weekend, him being Williams, and his agent coming out right after the signing of Brown that he wanted to trade. And look, all of us understand a left tackle is paid more than a right tackle. Williams has only been a left tackle. He wants to make left tackle money. So from the business side of things, I get it.
Yeah.
Okay? I get it. But you've already proven you can play left tackle. You're coming off a year where you played through 2 knee injuries. The first one, you didn't miss a snap. The guy's a gamer. Can't be debated on that. But I said it on Friday. I'll say it again today. I am really, really stunned that Williams, in a year, his final year for a team that drafted him in the first round, and he has a chance to play. He's played in back-to-back AFC championship games. He's played in a Super Bowl. He has a chance to win the whole thing this year. And apparently he's unwilling to move to right tackle.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't blame him for the money perspective. I don't think that it's a smart decision for him to do that. Just because I don't know if he can really cut it as a left tackle. That's more my problem with him doing this, is because he hasn't really shown that he can be, in my opinion, a franchise left tackle. I think he is definitely deserving of a chance at right. If you're going to say that he is a franchise left tackle, I think he's in the bottom tier. I don't think people give him a lot of credit calling him a mid-tier guy, but I mean, if you're going to put him in that tier, it's because of his dedication to a team. I mean, the dude played with a dislocated knee.
Yep.
and played admirably too in that game. I mean, he played great against the Ravens that game. When I look at because he's demanded a trade, I'm not going to spend too much time on whether or not they should keep him or not. In my mind, I think they should ship him. And the teams that make sense to me, there's not very many because of the cap space limitations right now. But I'm looking at the Colts as a good destination to go. I'm looking at maybe the Panthers. But there's just not very many teams right now. The Titans, maybe. They just cut Lawan Taylor.
Yep.
Or Taylor Lewan, I'm sorry.
Oh, his friends call him Lawan.
Lawan. Yeah.
Lawan, yeah.
Yeah, there's just not – I mean, a lot of the teams with a lot of cap space have left tackle solved at the current moment. The only team I don't know much about currently is the Bears, but I think they've got a guy. I just can't remember off the top of my head. But
yeah, they do.
There is another option that the Bengals could explore. If they can't find a trade partner, they can always still take some of the cap. Like they could take $6 million from his contract and pay that off and then trade him. So then a team doesn't have to take as big as a cap hit. That's an option too. Something that we're not really exploring, I don't think, at the current moment. Another thing, too, that we haven't really talked about is can he even pass a physical right now? I mean, he just came off of knee surgery. Is that even a thing that is possible?
It's a legitimate question.
So it's really tough for me in my mind. I don't know what they're going to do. I know they're going to try to trade him. I think they should trade him for just pennies, the 7th rounder, 6th rounder, just to get him off your books. I don't know if there's any teams that will do that. So I think the best option for them, just so we can move on from this conversation, take $6 million, split his contract up with the team, and then trade him for something a little bit more reasonable, like a 4th rounder. But that's my thought on the whole situation currently as it stands.
Okay.
You want to say something?
No, go ahead.
Some other things that I wanted to touch on, Bengals related, before we move on to a more general, broad discussion. Chancey Gardner-Johnson, I mean, he got really screwed. I mean,
he screwed himself.
Yeah. He was
offered a multi-year deal to stay in Philadelphia with a good winning Super Bowl runner-up team, and he was offered, according to all reports, a multi-year contract. And he did what Jesse Bates wanted to do. Now, Bates hit the lottery. Gardner-Johnson did not. He thought he was going to get paid among the elite on a long-term deal. Gets a 1-year contract with Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, that's not great for him. Just based off of that money, I mean, I'm almost pretty positive that he should have been a Bengal with that sort of contract. But he decided to wait. We decided to move on with Nick Scott. I think that's a very good signing.
You would think Long John Silver is a good signing.
I think it's
playing
a good
on
signing.
A wooden leg if he put on Bengals garb.
Well, the thing is,
true or false?
I wouldn't disagree. I don't think so, Tom. But I do think that based off of body of work, the amount he got, there's options for you to go get a guy still in the draft. And there's still options for you to move him around. You didn't spend too much money getting this guy. He can start, probably will start, and he can go all over the field, just like Dax can. And that just makes him very versatile. And I think that's a great signing for the Bengals. And then lastly, Bengals related, the Max Sharping signing, I don't know how much it's for. I haven't seen those numbers just yet. But again, that's another signing that is all about retention and keeping guys. And I'm not going to look at this one game, the AFC Championship game, and deem him a terrible guard or whatever they want to put him at.
No.
I don't think that's fair because he played against Chris Jones. I mean, the dude is a freak already, and he's a backup. You know, it's not a matchup you're supposed to win. Right? So in my mind, I think you have a decent backup there. I think you've got a guy that can plug and play and a guy that they like, a guy that they think that they got a steal out of. And they kind of did steal him from the Texans. So, all in all, I think the Bengals right now, they still have a question mark at right tackle. They still have question marks at tight end. So those are the two main
And they have
focuses.
question marks at running back.
Yep, I would agree with that.
And in my opinion, they've addressed, I think, the offensive line to this point where they would be fine going with, depending on how it works out with Williams. If he doesn't want to move, don't move on. They can play Carmen out there. They could draft somebody there if they want to do number one. But at running back, everybody agrees they're not going to keep Mixon's deal. Is Mixon open to renegotiating the deal, bringing it down, much like Jones did in Green Bay? And I still feel like there are two areas that concern me. And again, you're talking about trying to win a Super Bowl, and you're not going to win a Super Bowl without Joe Burrow being healthy. We all agree with that, okay? But tight end, they're going to have to address clearly, and I'm sure they're already addressing it. They had Moreau in here, as you mentioned, or Mayer or somebody like that in the draft if they don't want to draft a tackle. I still think they're very short on pass rush.
God,
really
it would be
short.
so nice to have an elite pass rush. It'd be so nice week in and week out. I feel like every week we go into this, and it's not a knock against Sam Hubbard necessarily. It's more so, we're not talking about a guy like Aaron Donald. Sam Hubbard has been an exceptional player for the Bengals. But how nice would it be week in and week out to have a guy like Aaron Donald? And I know they're rare. You're talking about one of the greatest defensive players of all time. How great would it be to have one of the greatest defensive players of all time? I get it. But, man, how nice would that be if you had somebody like that on that pass rush? Because I feel like week in and week out, we don't get to see that same type of attack that we see from some of these other teams.
No doubt about it. And I thought the guy that maybe they would try to trade for would be Zadarius Smith. He's now going to the Bears.
That's a good spot for him to go.
Yep.
Go beat up on his old team.
Yep. I thought that he would be a nice fit. And then the other area where, and again, I know this isn't the even in the top 10 on their wants, but I still think they should make a move for a backup quarterback. Because there might come a time, you hope and pray it doesn't happen, that you go through a 2 or maybe 3 game stretch. We saw it happen with the Steelers this year where, they had Trubisky. They go to Pickett. Pickett gets knocked around, gets concussed. He has to miss a couple. That happens all across the league by and large. Thank God it didn't happen to Burrow last year or the year before. But sometimes, you tweak a hamstring, a groin, whatever it might be. Now all of a sudden you got to go with fill in the blank. Brandon Allen ain't that guy.
Yeah, he is no Chad Henne. Chad Henne's won some very important games.
And there are teams trying to talk him out of coming into retirement, He retired at the end of the year. And already, apparently, there have been multiple teams that have approached him and said, hey, would you think about coming back?
If I'm him, I might consider it because there's just more money and you got one of the – everyone says it's one of the easiest jobs in the NFL, and I'm sure it's much harder than we make it out to be. But when you don't have all the pressure of starting and you just come in to fill in sometimes, I don't see why not. There's going to be a team that pays a guy like him, Mike White money, which was 2 years, $9 million, 2 years, $10 million. That's really good for backup money. Brandon Allen, to me, I agree with you. He's none of those guys. But Bengals more than likely will either draft someone or get someone as a UDFA, or they're going to bring back Brandon Allen just because he's been in the system on a really, really cheap deal. At least I hope that's what ends up happening. Not that I would ever hope for a player to not be able to get what they need to support their families, but just from a cap perspective, for them to go out and get someone, it just doesn't make sense, in my opinion. I think they gotta just wait and deal with Brandon Allen and just hope for the best.
Yeah, you're hoping for the best for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of quarterbacks, there are 2 major stories here that have been for quite a while, and they continue to be now. We are 7 days into officially free agency. Now, the Lamar Jackson camp, remember, him and his mom are the agents, right? So their camp keeps everything very close to the vest. So if he's been given an offer by somebody, it takes two to tango without having leaks. But it makes you wonder, is anybody out there offering Lamar Jackson a contract? Remember, he signed that non-exclusive franchise tag. The Ravens put that on him, which meant that he could go out, shop his services for another team. If that team offers him a contract, the Ravens have a choice. Do they match that contract, or do they get in return 2 first-round draft picks? Now, this thing has a chance to go all the way into July. I mean, so there's no huge rush here for Lamar Jackson to do anything. Right now, it might be for other teams out there because, they got to figure out who their quarterback is. But there is no doubt that the Ravens were hoping for some kind of quick resolution on this contract stalemate that's persisted, the better part of a year and a half, not being able to get a long-term deal done. When you do something like this, and these are smart people sitting in a room, DaCosta, their general manager, his boss, legendary Ozzie Newsome, and Steve Bisciotti, the owner, there's always contingency. Well, right now, the Ravens, not knowing what's going to happen, they can't do anything in the free agent market. I mean, nothing, because of their lack of cap space if Lamar Jackson comes back. I mean, Calais Campbell might be the single most important part of their locker room. Outstanding defensive lineman. And they've cut him loose. So, you look at what the Steelers have been active in free agency. The Browns have been very active. They just acquired Dalvin Tomlinson over the weekend. Rock solid. They bulked up that defensive line, what needed help to go along with Garrett. Whether you like the Browns or not, they're going out there and they're spending some cash. So you start looking, and we know what the Bengals have done with Orlando Brown. I mean, the Ravens were the gold standard, or at least gold and silver right there with the Steelers for a long time in this division. Competitive every year, roster building every year, drafting well, the whole 9 yards. And now all of a sudden they can't do anything. They need cornerbacks. They need a help on the defensive line with Campbell gone. They don't have any wide receivers to speak of. And they've lost a Pro Bowl offensive lineman. Their best offensive lineman is gone. This Lamar Jackson thing, Paul, you have all your good friends there in the D.C. area.
Yeah.
This thing is a mess.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I feel like every time I turn around and I see everybody tweeting about it from all the Baltimore people that I follow, it is a mess. And I don't really know what the resolution is. I don't know. It's almost, it's a bad analogy, but it's kind of like I'm looking at all this Ed Cooley stuff going to Georgetown, and you've gone down a road that he's trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube, Yeah. What are we doing here?
Yeah, the Ravens are in trouble, if you ask me. I had this picture as I was talking about potential trades with Jonah Williams, and it shows all the cap space for every team currently. And I don't know, guys. There's not very many teams, at least at the top, that can handle a cap hit for Lamar Jackson currently. There's just not. I just don't know. Like, they might just not be able to do anything about it. There's no one that's going to trade for him. He's going to end up probably signing that transitional tag, I think is what it's called. But yeah, the top teams that need a quarterback, I feel like the Falcons should be looking, but they're probably not going to. It's just the Colts. And the Colts would be a interesting destination for them, but they have a top 4 pick. Are they really going to trade that to the Ravens and another future first? I don't know. And the cap space there, they're at $20 million right now. And they have a lot of holes to fill as well. So it's not that's an interesting team, but I think that might be the only team I'm looking at here that makes sense. The next closest team, the Panthers, they have the number 1 draft pick for a reason. Titans, they want to move on from Ryan Tannehill, but they're at $15.4 million, and I have no idea what that contract looks like for Ryan Tannehill. So I don't know. The Ravens are in a really peculiar spot.
Well, you know, the Ravens and the Jacksonville Jaguars are the only teams in the NFL that have not signed an outside the organization player. Only 2 teams in the whole league. You know, you look at some of the moves the Ravens have made. This is their free agent activity so far this offseason. Running back Justice Hill. Linebacker Del'Shawn Phillips. DBs Trayvon Mullen and Geno Stone, and their long snapper Nick Moore. 5 in-house players. I tell you, everybody is a loser here, in my opinion, because, well, if you're a Bengals fan.
Can we clip that? Can we clip that?
Everyone's a loser.
Everybody's a loser.
On
Let's
this
clip
deal.
that.
They are. They are. I mean, look, nobody can make me believe that there is not some kind of, well, we know there's friction between the Ravens and Jackson. This stuff's gone on way too long, okay? No one can make me believe there's not friction with Jackson and some players in that locker room. Just based on what happened last season and physically not getting on a plane and coming to Cincinnati to watch and cheer for your teammates in the opening round of a playoff game. A playoff game, quite frankly, the Ravens should have won without him. The Ravens should have won that game against the Bengals. They should have. Took a miracle play. Miracle play at the goal line. Or the Bengals lose in round 1 to the Ravens without Lamar Jackson. So you got that stuff going on. A lot of people have suggested that the Jackson would sit out on a franchise. There is no way on God's earth that's going to happen. The single biggest mistake, or among the biggest in the history of the National Football League, was Le'Veon Bell sitting out a year with the Steelers. He was never the same player again, and never the same money again. He was a very below-average player once he came back. You sit out a year, you're not only physically not going to be the same, yeah, you wouldn't have the wear and tear, but you're also your bank account. In Jackson's case, that would be about $35 to $40 million. And you're just letting that drift into Never Never Land. And now all of a sudden you expect some team the next year to give you a contract for $1 gazillion guaranteed money, what you're looking for right now? No. This thing's a mess. Too bad for Baltimore. Now the other one is, I don't know if you saw the comments from longtime NFL executive Mike Tannenbaum about this Aaron Rodgers thing. Now Tannenbaum is a smart guy. I thought he did a lot of great things in New York, but they let him go. He made the comment that the New York Jets are in the driver's seat and have all the leverage on this Aaron Rodgers thing. Okay, for those of you that have not been paying attention, or quite frankly, you're worn out with Aaron Rodgers talk, how would you like to be somebody covering the Packers, dealing with this nonsense like Baltimore every day for 2 years? Right? The drama of Aaron Rodgers. But Tannenbaum swears. He says, look, he says the Packers, if this guy comes back and what it would mean to their salary cap and the salary hit and what they can do or can't do, he said it would ruin their team for the next 3 to 4 years. He said, believe me, that's what the Packers are facing, and they know it. Rodgers has already gone on record as saying no hard feelings in Green Bay. But after he came out of the darkness retreat, he says, I want to play for the New York Jets. Well, Tannenbaum says, now look, it is true. The Jets don't have right now a quarterback, unless you're bringing Zach Wilson back, which he's coming back. But they've already let White leave. They're going to bring Flacco back? They're in a quarterback dilemma because their defense is good enough and their skill position players are good enough that team can contend not only for a divisional championship. If you get Aaron Rodgers in there, that team can contend in the AFC right now to get to the Super Bowl. There's no doubt about it. So they need Rodgers. Rodgers needs them. Tannenbaum swears if he were the GM of the Jets, he said, I would not give up 1 first-round pick, forget 2 first-round picks. He said, the most I'm giving up is a 3rd-round pick because you got Green Bay by the fill in the blank. So what do you think about that?
I think this is a very classic moment here where 2 guys facing each other with their pistols ready to draw. Whoever's going to make the first move, I mean, they're just staring down each other. I mean, that's really all it is, if that's the case, right? I mean, the Jets, if they make their move first, Packers have the leverage. The Packers make their move first, the Jets have the leverage. And it's more about who's feeling the heat the most. And if you ask me who's feeling the heat the most, I got to say it might actually be the Packers. The Packers might be feeling it the most because they've been dealing with this drama surrounding their quarterback for so long. And they have to get this right or the organization is a mess. The fan base would be a mess. I mean, can you imagine they trade away Aaron Rodgers? He plays well for the Jets. Jordan Love, he plays poor for the Jets. And whatever pick that they get from the Jets doesn't pan out. Oof. So, I don't know. That's really an interesting thought that the Jets have all the leverage. That really is interesting to me. But I think to me, it's more about who's feeling the heat the most, who's going to make the first move in whatever this negotiation is to tilt in their favor. And once that happens, I think we're going to see some movement at some point here very soon, right? Maybe it happens all the way until the draft. They wait until the draft and then make a day trade during the draft. That would be interesting. But the longer that this goes on, the weirder it becomes to me. It's like, shouldn't he have already been traded by now if the Packers had all the leverage, right? And Aaron Rodgers clearly doesn't want to be there anymore. I don't know. This is really weird. What are your thoughts on it?
My thoughts?
Yeah.
I'm shocked that nothing's happened yet. To be quite honest, I think that for as much as we've heard, when you get into these situations now, and we talk about the state of professional sports, it seems like the players have all the leverage now in general, right? When players ask for trades most of the time, especially in the NBA, players ask for trades, they're granted them, whatever. For Aaron Rodgers to come out and basically go on and on and on, the Jets and everything else, and then for now we're just sitting on our hands for what? Basically, how long has it been? A week now? 2 weeks? How long has this been?
A week.
A
week?
For both Rodgers and Jackson.
How much longer can this go on?
Well, this can go on technically. The Rodgers thing, I guess, could go on indefinitely. But there has to be some resolution where Lamar Jackson's case has to be resolved by July. But, hell, July's a long time from now.
Well, that's what I mean. When you're holding these franchises hostage, when they got to make decisions about the draft, they got to make decisions in free agency, they got to make trade decisions, whatever it is, how much longer are these teams going to be willing to deal with it?
You got to have a quarterback, man. And the Jets are not going to win without a quarterback. And Green Bay ain't going to win without a quarterback. Green Bay's situation, I mean, good Lord. Here you had drafted. They made a terrible mistake. They thought that Aaron Rodgers was starting to slip. So they draft Jordan Love, spend a first-round pick, which ticks Rodgers off. All he does is go out and win back-to-back MVPs after that. And they give him a contract this time a year ago. It was only 1 year ago gave the Rodgers this deal. And now look at this mess. Hey, you know what, everybody? This is where you thank God that when you get the quarterback where there's not the drama. And the Bengals have that guy. Last thing we get to, fellas, into baseball. This story just moved across the wire moments ago.
Oh, breaking news.
Jim Bowden, the longtime general manager of the Reds. And look, I know a lot of people don't like him. My dad doesn't like him. I'll tell you right now, if I owned a Major League Baseball team, I'd hire that guy as my GM right now. I think the guy knows what he's doing. But that's just me. And most people will kill me for saying that. But I believe it's true. I think if you ever gave him a decent team with a decent payroll, he didn't have it with the Reds and he built a juggernaut. Although Marge did spend money. People forget about that. But then all of a sudden, went straight down to the tank. And, the rest is history. And in Washington, and then there was some stuff going on in the Dominican. What it was, I don't know what was going on.
Extracurriculars.
Right. All right. But apparently, Nick Kroll, the current general manager of the Reds, had a long conversation with the Athletics' Jim Bowden. That's what Bowden's doing now, is he is writing and contributing to the Athletic, that website. Nick Kroll said he's planning on having Joey Votto finish his career with the only franchise he's played for. But then Kroll said he'd consider trading Votto to his hometown Toronto Blue Jays if the Reds were out of playoff contention and Votto made that request. Back to what you were talking about with trades. In Votto's case, he has to okay any trade. And if this is accurate, what Bowden is reporting, Votto would have to come to the Reds and ask them to trade him to Toronto specifically. Well, look, if Nick Kroll goes on record as saying that him going public with that cannot be a shock to Joey Votto. There's no way, knowing Nick Kroll, that he would just throw that out there randomly out of the blue and say, well, yeah, if he came to me and asked about Toronto, I'd think about it. Or I'd try to make it happen for the guy. That's his hometown, right? I find this to be a really interesting story. Really interesting because, Votto, I would think, has had a chance to go play for a quote-unquote contender before now during the term of this 10-year deal, which expires at the end of this year. And we will never know until down the road after he retires or is long gone from him. But, he's still playing for the Reds. So how much does he want to go play for a contender? Two ways of looking at that. He's unbelievably loyal to the only team he's ever played for. Most players will tell you that they want to play for one team their entire career. Very few do. Two of the greatest Reds of all time did in Johnny Bench and Barry Larkin. But those guys are few and far between. Votto would be a third if he stays here. I mean, is he finally now at the end where he would consider that? Does that story shock you at all, Paul? You're a big baseball guy.
I think I'm with you in the sense that Nick Kroll would not bring this up out of nowhere. I think that would be too much of a shock to the system if all of a sudden Joey Votto's scrolling Twitter and he sees, wait, what? I can go back home? That's a calculated thing that he would have said. I do think you make a good point that a lot of these players do take some pride in the fact that they would play with the same team for their entire career. I think there is something significant to be said for that. I would be shocked, honestly. I would be shocked if Votto got traded. Maybe, I guess, not shocked as much now that we hear him say that. If that had come out of the blue, it would have been even more so. But I wouldn't have any hard feelings to Joey for the amount of work that he's put in for this franchise over the years and what he has done for this team. You can't be mad at the guy if he wants to go and finish out his career.
No, but here's my question, okay? And here's a question I've always asked. Again, it's you could look at this two different ways, maybe more than that. and I'm just not smart enough to figure it out. A lot of people in the chat, and we have a ton in the chat today, say, hey, look, I wouldn't be mad, like you just said, Paul. I'd respect it if he'd be okay. Others say he's loyal, and he only wants to win a championship in Cincinnati. Well, I got news for you. That ain't happening. That's not happening. People can say whatever they want. Yeah, you don't play the games on paper. You play them in the field. The Reds are not winning the World Series this year, and this is Votto's last year of his contract. So, the flip side of him being loyal and wants to win it here and all that is how badly does he want to play for a winner? How important is winning a World Series ring to Joey Votto? And I'm not going to beat the guy down if he just says, I really like it here. This is the only franchise I've ever played for. That's what I want to do. And you know what? Winning the World Series, if it's not here, then I don't really care about it with somebody else, even if it would be my hometown team. And to be completely honest with you, Toronto is not a fit in any form or fashion for Joey Votto. They have Guerrero, who's just a total stud, and then they signed Brandon Belt during the offseason. And to be completely honest with you, right now, Brandon Belt and Joey Votto, and people are going to go crazy when I say this, but they basically offensively for the last year have been the same guy. Now, Votto's been hurt, in fairness to him. Votto's been a much better player than Belt. That's not what I'm saying. It's not even comparable. But I think this is something we talk a little bit more about tomorrow. Because, and some people say, is Toronto a contender? I think they're definitely a contender. Now, they're in a tough division. They can score. I don't know how good their pitching is, but, man, do they got some bats. All right, do we have a cherry on top?
This one's a special one just for you, Tom, in case you got this.
Really? Okay, here we go. Brought to you by UDF.
You'll love this one, Tom.
We got box lunch coming up.
I expect a lot of all caps messages in the chat from this one.
Oh, my God.
We love watching the NCAA for a variety of reasons, but it costs employers in lost productivity, right? We're just so distracted.
We're very distracted during this time of year, Fred. All of the time filling out our brackets, doing the research just to see the brackets get busted, right into the tournament, and then watching the games during work hours. It's costing employers and lost productivity. Lost productivity up to $17.3 billion this year. That's up $1 billion from a year ago. And that's because we have more Americans working than they did a year ago. Wages are also up. So that's increasing lost productivity, and we're spending more time researching our brackets.
Oh, my goodness. That's big money when you put it that way.
That's big money.
Tom, thoughts?
Well, to begin with, it's the last time we will ever see CNN's logo on this program again. That I can tell you.
It's your guys.
The genius there who was getting interviewed reeled off all those facts about the wages are up. Yeah, really? Really? You seen the inflation numbers? Over 6%? Wages ain't up 6%, big boy. Fake news. Fake news. What the hell are you laughing at, Trace Fowler? If that CNN logo ever shows up on this program again, one of two things is going to happen. Trace, you're going to be firing guys and heading out on the employment line, or I'm on the unemployment line. One or the other.
Finally got the line in the sand for Tom.
It's America's newsroom.
We found it.
That's good
We
stuff.
found the line in the sand.
You guys knew when you put
Oh,
it
we
up
knew.
there.
Yeah,
That was good.
we knew what we were doing.
We're
Casey knew what he
jacking
was
around
doing.
a little bit. We're jacking around a little bit. Okay. All right. Box lunch today, boys. How we looking?
Great, Tom.
Win any cash this weekend, boys? Or a little light in the wallet? How we looking?
I did well. Trace did a lot more well than I did, but I did well.
Trace did?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Trace had career days.
Yeah, I had the best day. Best day I've ever had.
You did?
I think I might stop.
And
the
that
rest
led
of the
you to get a
tournament.
Buc-ee's sweatshirt?
Yeah. Well, sometimes whatever's clean in the closet's what I wear.
I love Buc-ee's.
So,
So where did you do so well? I mean, is there a game in particular?
Yeah.
Did you have a parlay going? What?
I
Or
woke
you'd
up.
rather not discuss it knowing that the IRS, thank God, those 88,000 agents they were going to hire, now that's on the floor, DUN done. So go ahead. You don't have to worry about those guys as much.
No, I woke up Saturday morning and I looked at the board, is what some say, but I looked at all the lines and I just felt good about it, and I trusted my gut, and I went and checked some of the systems to see if like what I seen initially was being reaffirmed, and Tennessee was it was the prototypical system play that we call around the office. So I went all in on them money line for a responsible amount. If you have a gambling problem, want to call in 100 Gambler, 21 plus in Ohio. But I went all in on Tennessee. And then I took 7 money lines for a parlay, and it hit.
You're kidding me.
So I just... I was up a lot of money.
Holy Moses.
More importantly, Tom, how was your rookie debut? You said you left the office Friday, and you said, you know what? I'm going to go. I got Betfred Sportsbook.
I didn't do it.
Oh, no.
I didn't do it.
Tom, they called you up. They said they want the righty. They called you out of
I'll
the pit.
get back on. I will get in there on Thursday night.
Friday night, you can take the Muskies +4.
+4. Is that the early line there?
That is.
That is it.
Wow.
Just go ahead and take their money line.
Okay. All right. Okay. So what's coming up here on Box Lunch?
We're just going to talk about the tournament. We're definitely not going to talk about the World Baseball Classic. That's not happening. But we're going to talk a lot about the tournament. And once again, we are not talking about the World Baseball Classic because there's nothing to talk about, Tom.
You're the guy that loves that. Why? Are you kidding me?
Right. There's nothing to talk about. We're not going to talk about it.
I think there's a lot to talk about with the World Baseball Classic.
That's good.
I do.
Well,
I do. We didn't have time to get to it today. They have the other semifinal tonight, right? Japan and Mexico. Correct?
Correct, yep.
Correct. And then when's the championship game?
Tomorrow.
It's tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
Is that in Miami?
In Miami.
Wait, the World Baseball Classic Championship is tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Tomorrow night.
Yeah.
USA.
The other semi, well, the U.S.
in it?
won in the semis yesterday. Mexico, Japan tonight. Final tomorrow night.
If Japan wins, I think Shohei's going to pitch tomorrow.
He said that I seen an interview. We said we weren't going to talk about it.
We're not going to talk about it. That's true.
We got to save some of this stuff.
You're right.
Okay. All right, boys. Paul,
Yes.
Casey, thank you very much. Tomorrow we got Brian Billick is going to join us, talk about some of this stuff in the NFL.
Tracy.
What's that?
Tracy?
Tracy Jones will be here. And so look forward to that tomorrow. Thank all of you for joining us. Time now. Load it up. Box Lunch. Here we go.
I must admit, I didn't think much of this show the first time I laid eyes on it. Seemed like a bunch of stiffs wasting nice
The worst
microphones.
trade of all time happened back in 1803. Go ahead. Napoleon Bonaparte traded the Louisiana Purchase for $3 million. Napoleon, what happened? Half the country for $3 million. You can't even get Tucker Barnhart for $3
Then
million
I came to realize
anymore.
these guys are funny.
And Justin Fields have identical stats the last 5 weeks about throwing the football. This guy, okay,
And
folks,
are
is a
some of the
fidget
best
spinner.
gamblers I've come to know.
If you're betting on USC and or TCU, let it be known you are a square.
TCU is going to hammer this team tomorrow night.
I hate to hear that.
Tomorrow
When we come back
afternoon.
in here on Monday, you're going to be happy as a lark because USC lost, but you're going to be wrong about TCU.
Get ready for the most useless hour of your day. It's time for Boxed Lunch, presented by Betfred Sportsbook. Now, Casey, run that track.
You did do a fill-in. I asked him, am I going to be able to feel my mouth in about 2 hours or not? He said, do you need to talk? I said, yeah, I need to talk a little bit, or I don't need to talk at all. I just want to know where I'm going to be. And he said, well, I think I can feel something. So here I am. I can feel half my mouth. I'm going to do the best I can. And Casey's playing royalty-free music now because he is the man in charge, and he does not want any copyright strikes from YouTube. So he's not fun anymore. That's what I've come up with. Casey,
No fun, Casey
is no fun. Don't want to get copyright strikes from YouTube. Fair enough.
See, I was going to use the minute that we play that song
But
as a way to culture the people watching this. Play some old 60s, some 70s tunes. Really culture the masses, but now we can't because we got to go royalty free.
there's something to be said about that too. Like, I don't know what the whole – I get the idea of wanting to make sure the artists get paid and, everything's fair and there's equality to it. But, at what point do we get to where there's at least like a 30-second buffer of being able to like utilize somebody's music and then
7 seconds.
But that's not real if you Google it. Just saying. I'm not saying I'm a lawyer, but I did Google it, and there's lawyers that say that's not even a real thing. However, not to get on a side tangent about corporate law and all of that.
Oh, baby.
However,
we're not going to talk about that.
Is that bad? Is that a bad idea?
I don't know. We're not going to talk about lawyer talk. We're not going to talk World Baseball Classic.
No World Baseball Classic. The best thing about that whole thing is Thom wasn't catching on at all to that whole situation that we're not going to talk about the World Baseball Classic. We're going to keep on not talking about it. X going to give it to you. The number one thing on the track. I had the best career day I've ever had as far as wagering. This show is brought to you by Brett Fred Sportsbook on Saturday. And to be frank with you, there's dominoes that happen in life. If one thing that leads to the next thing, if the first thing doesn't happen, the next thing never has a chance of happening. The Xavier Musketeers for me were that initial domino. I made a very unintelligent bet.
I told you not to.
And he told me not to. I was warned by Reed Mouse not to do it. But I did it anyways. Because I thought, there's no way Xavier's going to lose to Kennesaw State. Especially after I watched Kennesaw State play for about, 15 minutes on ESPN Plus at a 1:30 the night before. They did not impress me. So I thought, why not just throw enough money to make $200 on the Muskies money line? This was before the game. I don't know if you watched the game. But I was staring $1,600 right down the drain, right in the eye. But I got to give it to you, Paul. You guys figured it out. They won the game.
They did.
And they kept my betting spirits alive and well, because I know one thing. If I would have lost and Xavier would have lost, I would have been just as sad as Paul. Maybe not as sad as Paul, but I would have been pretty damn close. And I would have decided from there on out I was done for the rest of the tournament. But that didn't happen, did it, Paul? What happened, Paul?
No, yeah, they figured it out. 9.5 minutes left. They started actually playing basketball. They figured it out.
Where were the stress levels at when we got to the single digits in the game? Because I was watching the game with Trace, and I was cool.
I thought we were doing both pretty good.
I was cool as a cucumber till it got right around under 12, and I'm like, all right, guys, it's time to rock and roll here.
Yeah, so I was sitting there, and I was thinking to myself. I mean, I've gotten pretty good at not, because you're sitting there, you're not reacting, you're not you're not in the stands, whatever. So I'm pretty good about keeping things in check. I actually got to a point with about 13, 14 minutes left in the game where they were trading twos so much. I was calm. I was perfectly calm because I had accepted defeat at that point. I don't want to say that I thought they were going to lose, but I had come to terms with the fact that Twitter was on, another level. The fans were all for Kennesaw State because you get the neutrals on the side of the underdog. Kennesaw State traveled crazy well. They also had an incredible fight song that has been stuck in my head for 2 days. So they were, you know how this is how I explained it to some people that didn't hear it. You know how when a band, they play their song, and you know how when a band, when they play their song,
right, get into it,
and everybody's going back and forth. They pulled it up. Casey, you could pull it up. The Kennesaw State fight song if you can.
Is it a bop?
They're like, you don't wanna go to war with the Owls, and they'd play it every 2 minutes. I'm sitting there going, you don't want to go to war.
It's an earworm.
And I was sitting there the whole time. I'm kind of looking around. I was where we had sat. They sit the media up opposite. I don't know why they do this, but they sit you across from the opponent's bench. So the Kennesaw State media was across from the Xavier bench. We were across from their bench, but we're also, that means, in the Kennesaw State section. So I got, the families, everybody behind. You don't want to go. And I'm sitting there going, to war. And I'm like, oh, with the Owls. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of good. I've been singing this for 2 straight days. I'm singing on the drive home last night. I caught myself. I'm just like, and I'm like, man, this is great. So anyway, with about 13 minutes left, I'm like, and I'm like, God, all right, this is it. Like we've gotten to this point in the season. It's kind of it.
I think I got it, by the way.
Let's see.
All right, throw it up there. I don't think this has words in it, but like you'll get the tune. You'll get the idea of it.
It does. This one actually does if you go about halfway into the middle of it, Casey. Just rip like halfway to the middle of it. It does have words.
It does have words?
Yeah, just go like somewhere randomly in the middle and start playing.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
Yeah.
There it is. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Play this. Yeah, so just picture the band doing this. All right. So I'm sitting there and I'm doing this the whole time, and I'm like, all right, with about 10 minutes left, I thought Xavier had run out of time because they weren't hitting threes. They weren't playing how they needed to play, like stylistically, to get back in the game. Then with about a minute and a half left in the game, I stood up out of my chair and I put 2 fingers on my neck because it was the first time in my life I legitimately felt my pulse pulsing like out of my neck. Because I was to the point where I was like, all right, now they've come back and made it a game, and now if they lose, it's going to be brutal.
Right.
Because when they were getting killed, it was like, all right, the 14 seed came out, they outplayed the team that just thought they were going to run over them. It is what it is. It's March. But then when Xavier came back and started, playing well, then I'm going, oh, this is going to rip my heart out.
Well, so me and Trace were watching that game. He's obviously got a bunch of money on it. I've got some heart in the game. And I'm sitting here watching. They bring it all the way back in 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
They get back from that 13-point deficit in 5 minutes. It was about the 5-minute mark. It's tied up. And they continuously got stops on the defensive side, but they couldn't take the lead. And it was so frustrating because they stormed all the way back, and you're like, all right, keep it rolling. Don't settle. They get a stop, come on down, they don't get a bucket. They get a stop, they come on down, don't get a bucket. And it's just sitting there at the same score for 4 straight possessions, and you're just like, man, we did all this work. We did all this. And is it not going to matter?
Yeah.
Is it not going to matter at the end?
Yeah.
And me and Trace are dancing around this office right here, just screaming. But, man.
Where were you watching? You're on TV?
Right there.
Right
Heart
there.
Heart was pumping.
Oh.
It honestly felt it felt like you're at the casino. You put your final chips on black or something like that. You're like, here we go, and your back's to the roulette table. You don't even want to look, and then it finally hits red, and you're either getting pumping or you're just walking away, not saying anything to anyone, and you're just leaving the casino right there. Right. Of course, I knew it. Put it on black.
Sule Boom had a turnover. I don't remember what exact moment and marker of the time was, but Xavier had come roaring all the way back, and I just remember there being this careless, ridiculous turnover that Xavier had. And I don't remember.
Was it Des Claude?
Maybe it was Des.
Yeah, he fell down.
Yeah,
he fell down.
Yes,
and
it
threw
was.
back.
That's
Des
what
fell
it
down.
was. Des fell down, and he did whatever he did, and I audibly or not audibly, I just fell to the floor and laid there in a fetal position for every bit of 30 seconds. However, Xavier wasn't the only team that was more than likely going to lose. I don't know if this happens every year because I have not been paying attention to the tournament like I have been this year, especially with gambling and live lines and understanding the winning probability. But in the chat, you want to have some fun. Guess how many teams that are in the Sweet 16 currently at one point, and I'm using ESPN's Gamecast model as the metric here, of the 16 teams, of 1 point in their first 2 games was not ever in a position that they were expected to lose based off the percentages of the Gamecast. You got 16 teams still left in the tournament. We can go around the room and take a guess. I know Reed probably knows because he was out there while I was doing this.
A greater than 50% chance
Just
to win.
Greater than 50% chance
all
to
80
win.
minutes.
All 80 minutes. All 40 minutes, excuse me. Well, 80 minutes.
All 80 minutes.
80 minutes for both games, yes.
Trying to think. Wouldn't be Kansas State. Wouldn't be obviously Xavier. Wouldn't be FAU because FDU had the lead. Reed, do you know the answer?
Take a wild guess. Just
well,
give me a
think
number.
about it. It'd be better to say who do you think had a greater than 50%, like on the other side. Who do you think was in control of their games the whole time?
Right.
Yeah.
So like Alabama.
no.
Alabama would be a team that never once fell under 50% chance to lose that.
How many teams are we talking about here?
Well, you have 16 teams total left. How many teams do you think were at one point in danger of losing?
Sorry. I
you're
thought
fine.
you said there was only one team.
No.
Oh, and I was trying to guess that team.
No, there's more than one.
I'll say 3.
Decent guess. I'm going to run through the teams right now and the winning percentages that they had at one point, or I guess at this point, the percent chance of them losing is really the way you should think of this. Kansas State. At one point, they were 81% chance of losing against University of Kentucky. Princeton, 96.3% chance of losing to Arizona. San Diego State, 61% chance of losing to Charleston in the first round. Xavier, 92.8% against Kennesaw State. Miami, 90% against Drake. Miami, 90% chance of losing in the first round against Drake. FAU, 89% versus Memphis, which we can get into in a minute. Creighton, 67% versus NC State. Michigan State, 65% chance against Marquette. Gonzaga, 70% chance against TCU. Arkansas, 90% chance against Kansas. Houston, 71% chance versus Auburn. Texas, 64% chance versus Penn State. Tennessee, 51% chance, the closest one to being to where they didn't have it, against Duke. UConn, 60% chance to lose to St. Mary's. The only 2 teams that are left in this tournament that have not once on the ESPN Gamecast indicator have been at an underdog position in this tournament is Alabama and UCLA.
UCLA.
To me, and maybe like I said before, this might be normal. I find it wild that there's that many teams that make the Sweet 16. And we're not talking about just, Tennessee was the only one that was 50% percentile. The rest are 60% or above. There's every bit of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams on this list that were at 90% or higher. That's why this tournament's the best. That's why it's called March Madness. And obviously this isn't breaking news. But I'm going to go back to the point we made, I think, a few weeks ago. And Sean Spurlock, who's in this office, and you guys met out at Wings and Rings. A few of you did, I'm sure. And he was on the live stream for a little while, and you've seen him in here. He's brought this up. Parity in college basketball is shrinking massively. The 1s versus 16s that we used to talk about were 40, 50-point games not that long ago. Mm-hmm. No, I mean, every bit of 10, 15 years ago, right. they were 50-point games. Now, a team, as much as we want to think that Alabama dominated, Alabama's only like, whatever, 20-something point spread against whoever they were playing. Now, Purdue, not to sit up here and say that we were all relatively right about Purdue, and to a certain extent we were kind of right about Arizona, but the weird thing about this whole tournament is you kind of can get up here and you can make claims that you're right about a team and wrong about a team. But then there's teams that win games that they shouldn't have won, and then all of a sudden they go on these big runs, and I guess my main point is it's wild to me to think that I could sit up here and say that Xavier was frauds if Kennesaw State plays just a little bit better for 2 minutes of basketball. Now, to be honest, I think Xavier could make the Final Four if they get, well, let me back up.
I was going to say.
There's a chance that they could make the Final Four if something crazy happens and they are able to get really hot against Houston, and or Houston just has a bad game and they play against Miami and Miami wins. I think Xavier Texas is a really good game.
I think Xavier Texas might be Gonzaga UCLA is going to be a really good game. I think Xavier Texas might end up being it has the potential to be one of the best games of the weekend because just the way the teams match up. I actually think Xavier matches up decently with the starting lineup. I said this on Tom's show. But you get into that bench. Texas is pretty deep. They're pretty skilled. Marcus Carr is the type of guy that would give Xavier a lot of trouble.
So maybe Colby Jones has a good defensive game against him. Xavier's got to hit some shots, though. But we'll talk more about that as it goes on, as the week goes on.
All right.
Trace, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you brought up all those, how badly they were down in according to ESPN Gamecast. It's crazy to see the differences between the Gamecast win probability and what the books are allowing for live lines, which you would think that they'd be using a similar algorithm on allowing that. But like you mentioned, Houston being down 10 at halftime in their game. I think like with a minute to go in the first half, they were down 7 or 8, and they were still favored over Auburn. They're down 8 points against one of the top teams in the SEC, and still favored by 2 points going into halftime. And obviously that proved to be a winner. And you mentioned the matchup graphic for Tennessee versus Duke. Tennessee was favored on ESPN, had a 75% chance to beat Duke before the game, but Duke were 3-point favorites in the betting lines. It's just interesting to see the juxtaposition between those two things.
I think Vegas or the sports books, they have to hedge the live bet a little bit because they're just assuming what every other person's going to do in a spot where if Houston's down by 8, everyone's like, oh, Houston's going to come back and win. They got to cover themselves a little bit. No one would have expected Houston to come back and win in the margin of victory that they had, or won by, obviously. But my point is that even Purdue, to a certain extent, right? Like 3 quarters away into that game, you're like, there's a good chance this is going to come down to the very end. Just based off the feel of the game, you're like, but Purdue is still 7.5 point, 8-point favorites. It's like, what's going on here?
With 3 minutes to go, they were down 4 and were 3.5-point favorites. With 3 minutes to go.
Yeah.
Like, am I sorry, sucker? Sucker was just like, sure, Purdue, there's no way they lose to FDU, right? No way.
Well,
and that was my IU fan coming out like, they're going to win this game, aren't they?
You just kept thinking, like, there's no way Zach Edey's not going to score here. There's no way that they're not going to go to Zach Edey. And then they just kept not going to Zach Edey. He didn't score for what, the last 12 minutes of the game?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, he's still right.
I just don't understand. It was a crazy scene, and the NCAA is extremely strict about what you can and can't post. Like, I have a great angle of Jack Nungy's block that I'm not allowed to post anywhere because of copyright issues. The video I got from the Kentucky, who would that have been, Providence game, they put a double box on the Jumbotron of the Purdue game against FDU. Mm-hmm. And the entire – I mean, it was not sold out. There were some rows at the top that were open, but it was a very close to sold-out Greensboro Coliseum of almost entirely Kentucky fans who are in the same region as Purdue, wanted Purdue out of there. The entire arena was doing FDU chants while the Kentucky game was going on. It was insane. I'd never really seen anything like it because the PA announcer kept saying, we go to another live look-in from Columbus. And then they'd flash it up on the screen, and then they'd come out of they'd play it during the timeout. They'd come out of the timeout. They'd take it off the screen, and then they finally the last time out, the games were kind of lining up to where they just left it on the screen, and people were chanting FDU the whole time. It was crazy.
What the true magic of March Madness is every year you look at the bracket, and you think that there's going to be an upset somewhere, and you try to guess. And a lot of times you're just dead wrong, right? I mean, you're just looking at it like, I think we were talking about Texas losing to Colgate and stuff like that. And we also said Arizona, which I guess we were right there. But you look at it like, how do these 1s and 2s not get through the first game? And now we're looking going at the Sweet 16. There's only 4 1s and 2s still around. Like 4 teams have been outed. Yeah. It happens every year. And you expect it, but you half don't. You try to look at it like, wait, I know there's going to be an upset. Where's it going to happen? Arizona can't lose to Princeton. Purdue can't lose to FDU. Then it happens. You never can guess it.
It's a good segue to one versus the field. We've been talking about this for a great length of time. I watched Alabama. I've been a fanboy of Houston, as many of you know, for a while. I watched Alabama play maybe for the first time at a great length of time the other day. I don't know how they lose a game.
You're like
sounds like Thom.
You're like Thom. Like when Purdue loses, what
Well,
happens?
I'm not like Thom in that regards because Purdue's really a really easy team to figure out. They got one guy that's really dominant, and they have really shitty basketball players outside of that. You can say whatever you want to say about Purdue. Maybe they had a bad night. No, I've watched Purdue play 4 or 5 games. They do not have a good basketball team. They have one great player that then theoretically, if you're a college basketball player, 50% of the time you should play relatively well. And the problem with Purdue is when I would watch them, they'd have 4 or 5 guys outside of Edey who just aren't great players. I know that sounds like very cynical, but Zach Edey deserved so much better than what he got at Purdue in regards to this year. If you take Zach Edey and you give him Sule Boom, Adam Kunkel, and I don't even know if you need anyone else. They easily skate through most of their games. Maybe give them one more decent forward. But my main point is that they don't have a guy that scares you from the outside remotely at all. And maybe, like I said before, certain guys can they can hit shots to a certain extent for 1 or 2 games. But they don't have anyone consistent. Purdue never had one guy that I was like, you know what? If Zach Edey gets sick and he can't play, they'll survive because of this, and this. That never happened. Alabama, I'll be honest, when I watch them, I'm like, 2 of their guys could get sick, and I'm like, I don't know. I still think they can figure out how to find a way to win. They scored 96 points, and Brandon Miller didn't score a single one of them. Now, they were playing a 16 seed, to be fair, but there's just so much depth there that I don't know how. I know that how they lose. I'm not stupid. You can get cold in a 40-minute basketball game and not play well. But my God, if they played NBA Finals type stuff where you had to play a 7-game series, guys, would it be crazy to think that Alabama would be like even money against the whole entire rest of the field?
In a 7-game series?
Yeah. 7-game series, and they had to play every team left.
I mean,
I don't think they lose to anybody.
Well, it's funny. About 2 months ago, I brought this up out there. Me and Paul were looking at futures, and we saw Alabama was like plus 1,200 or something like that. And I'm like, Paul, you can get Alabama for plus 1,200. We tried to tell Spur, and Spur like almost laughed at us. He's like, you think that's good value? Yada yada. And in hindsight, looks like great value now. I mean, they're in the Sweet 16. They're one of 2 1 seeds still around. They look like they're the best team in the tournament. Them in Houston, it looks like they're in a collision course for this whole thing. But to push back about your point against Purdue a little bit,
sure,
is because of the player that Zach Edey was, and the way that Purdue had to play with his skill set, you almost feel like they are pulled into the gravity that is Zach Edey. They don't get their own chance to play any other way. They don't get their own chance to shine because they've got this, Goliath-type figure sitting in the middle of the paint that you can't play around, right? You've got to play very directly with the skill set that Zach Edey has. So it doesn't give a whole lot of free-flowing opportunity for Purdue to play without Zach Edey. So I will push back on that a little bit. But you're right. They didn't have any guards. You give them some guards that you see these other Sweet 16 teams have. They seem like almost a juggernaut of a team. But you're right also about Alabama. I can't see a world in which Alabama or Houston loses this tournament. The only other team that I think can really compete with them is UCLA.
Yeah, and I don't know how healthy Singleton is. I guess I could do some digging right now. I don't know if you guys seen any update on Singleton. He went down with an ankle injury at the very end of that game. They're obviously already out. I can't think of the kid's name, but he's their best defender.
Jalen Clark.
So Jalen Clark, they'll be out 2 guys. I don't know if UCLA's in a position where they could lose Singleton and continue to win. They got to play Gonzaga. So Gonzaga's one of those weird teams too, to where I don't know if I'm buying that stock though. To be frank, let's reseed the field. Let's do it really quickly.
Yeah. So
because we don't have anything else to talk about. Because the next thing after that, we don't talk about the World Baseball Classic. So.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about the World Baseball Classic.
Short show today.
Yeah. I reseeded this, and I want you guys to push back if you guys disagree with this. All right? So out of the teams in the Sweet 16, this is who I have. And the 1 seeds, obviously, it's Bama and Houston. They're already 1 seeds. And then UCLA would be the guarantee for that third 1 seed. And you have a couple different routes to go for that final 1 seed. I think Trace disagrees with this one. I'd like to hear your take, Paul. I have Gonzaga actually taking that final 1 seed. The other teams that you could have thrown in there were Texas, UConn, Xavier, Tennessee. But I had Gonzaga as that final 1 seed.
I would have put Texas over Gonzaga, but I don't think I would really put up a huge argument for it because by every metric, like if you want to just go by the analytics or the metrics, by every metric, Gonzaga is playing as good or better than anybody in the country right now. So I know they struggled a little bit last night, but they came back to win against TCU. Disgusting cover there at the end, by the way, by TCU. But
not if you had TCU.
I told them this. I watched 3 or 4 different videos from different sports books in Vegas where they just had a camera panned over the entire crowd watching the final moments of that game. And it was hilarious because you'd see 200 people in this shot of just the entire sports book. And when that shot goes in, half of the people are jumping up and cheering, and then the other half, you just see souls leave their body as their guaranteed cover just dissipates so quickly. Just an electric atmosphere.
Trace, that was like the Arizona game that you and I were on earlier.
Oh, that was Arizona was worse.
I
know. I've never seen something like that in my entire life, Paul. I mean, you had a guy that 99% of the time dribbles the ball out. Doesn't even try to shoot, Paul. But then you have a guy that goes to try to dunk the ball who 99.9% of the time makes the dunk. Then the ball bounces off the rim on said dunk, and it bounces right to a guy. Maybe we'll say 50% of the time it'll actually go to the other team, and that happened. And then not only that, but it gets rushed down the floor, and a guy probably shoots a three-pointer who shoots 30%, and he makes it. Do you realize the math that had to go into all that happening was every bit, in my opinion, 1,000,000 to 1. TCU was a little bit different because the guy made a corner 3. No one wants to talk about that. First of all, the whole bad beat thing with TCU is this. They turn it over in the lane, and then the guy has the corner 3, and then the guy lets the ball dribble all the way down the floor and then shoot a 3 at the end. So, and then the other crazy thing, not that we're going to turn this into a degenerate show, but did you guys see the fact that the over would have hit if that guy would have made a 360 dunk in the Florida Atlantic game?
Oh, that was for the over?
That was for the over. If he makes that dunk, it goes over.
Oh, so he was point shaving.
Well, I don't even know. If he was point shaving, I don't think he would have tried the dunk in the first place. I think he was just a college kid trying to have fun. And I'll tell you what, I've gotten to the point where maybe I've just flipped it on its head. I used to be the guy that was, from a baseball standpoint, I cared about all the unwritten rules. I didn't like guys showing people up and this, that, and the other. And I would have been the guy maybe a few years ago to say, oh, that's ridiculous. He's trying to make a dunk at the end of the game. I've gotten to the point now where I don't know what's maybe transpired where I just don't care anymore. But, who gives a rat's tail if a guy's going to dunk the ball at the very end of a game and you lose by an extra 2 points or not? He's trying to be fun. He's having fun out there. And I'll tell you what, if you don't like it, this is what I always say. If you don't like guys pimping home runs, then don't give a home run up. If you don't like guys showing you up, then don't give up a touchdown. If you don't like guys dunking at the end of the game, then don't be down and don't let them go dunk the ball. That's how I feel about it. Sportsmanship is hilarious to me. We like guys talking. I'm going to try not to cuss. We like guys mouthing off to each other the whole entire game.
Right.
But then we don't like the idea of some guy having fun and doing a 360 dunk when everyone else on the floor quit. What happened to the people that suck? What about the idea of the same people that say play till the very final whistle, play to the very end, are those same demographic of type of people that would also say that you shouldn't do a 360 dunk?
Well, it's funny. It's just you hear stories about Larry Bird and Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson just MFing each other for a full 48 minutes, and then if that happened, the same sportsmanship where they're dunking in a blowout to end the game, they would have an upheaval at that idea, a conniption, just the thought of someone breaking one of the unwritten rules. And it's a contract, right? Sportsmanship and non-sportsmanship. When you have sportsmanship, the contract is I won't do anything unsportsmanlike if you don't, but the same contract rolls the other way. If we can talk shit, if we can celebrate as this game advances, then you can too. I can't get mad at you for doing the same things. If I want to bat flip, you can bat flip. That's the whole rule. It's a contract.
Right.
And we're slowly moving to the idea that let's have a little bit more fun with these games. Let's not just be robots out there.
So I usually lean toward you guys on this too. The only reason last night that I was a little like, I didn't even get mad, but the only reason I was a little like, was because it was poor FDU. It's like, are we?
Oh, please!
Like, are we really doing this to these guys?
Poor FDU. They had a sold-out crowd there almost last night.
I know, but
all
it's not like
rooting
it was,
for FDU.
But it's not like it was Purdue and he's making a statement that they beat a 1 seed. Like, we're just kicking him while he's down.
Oh, come
Please,
on.
Paul, save it.
I didn't like
Save
it.
it, Paul.
I didn't like
they
it.
beat a
And
1 seed.
I'm usually on the train with you guys, but I didn't like it last night. I didn't like it.
Oh, they beat a 1 seed, Paul. What do you mean? They had the whole entire arena rooting for them. Think about the Florida Atlantic kids for a minute. They didn't do nobody harm. They didn't do nothing
you're
wrong.
right.
They're 33-3. They roll up into Nationwide Arena.
No, you're
and
right.
they got every single player there, person there, rooting against them because FDU is these darling team, which rightfully so. But I ain't gonna feel bad for them if they're giving up a 360 dunk at the end of the game.
Yeah, I just think it's like if he doesn't, because then the whole game ends with the whole crowd booing. Like, it's just, you're going to the Sweet 16 for the first time in school history. Like, and if you're gonna do the dunk, make the dunk. Like, it's just a sour way to end the game. Like, if you're gonna do it, okay, fine, but make it. It's just like, I don't know.
Speaking of showboating, we won't talk about it long because we don't want to break our contract of saying we were not going to talk about the World Baseball Classic.
We could talk about the world. No, we can't talk about the world.
But here's the thing. I don't know if you've seen the Venezuela pitcher after he struck out Tucker, I believe it was, in a bases-loaded jam. Did you see that?
Kyle Tucker?
Did you see that? He struck out.
Yeah.
Did you see the
No, I
pitcher?
didn't see
If you didn't see the pitcher, he was very
arrow.
animated. Very animated, getting fired up, screaming and yelling, basically, at the entire bench of the United States of America. And I like that. That's fun. That's what baseball should be.
Well, we're not going to talk about it, though.
Okay, well, we'll
Right.
we will. What are you going to talk about?
Well, let's get through these reseeding the field. We got through the first seed, and then
How many are you going to seed?
All 16 teams. So this
Well,
is these
damn.
2 seeds. Texas, UConn, Xavier, and Tennessee.
No, I think UConn should be a 1 seed, but that's here nor there. So I'm not going to disagree with the rest of them.
Do you think that Miami or Creighton is better than Tennessee? Are you guys cool with the 2 seeds?
I think Tennessee is better than both those teams.
Okay. Miami, Creighton, Arkansas, K-State is the 3 seeds. Cool?
Okay.
What were the 3 seeds?
Miami, Creighton, Arkansas, K-State.
Miami.
Which means that Michigan State and San Diego State would be on the outside looking in as 4 seeds, and then FAU and Princeton as the final 4 seeds.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right.
Fair enough.
All right, now we got through that.
I mean,
segment.
nobody
I think
thinks
San Diego State is better than people think.
Mountain West.
Man,
They gotta go to
Mountain
the- they
West
gotta
is
go-
so
Did
disappointing.
you see that guy, the meme? Oh, I gotta send it to you. The just guy carrying the flag for the it was good. Mountain West. Yeah, they Spur.
So we put in our group chat that there was an offer for how many conference wins a certain conference would get, Big 12, Big 10, how many wins they'd get in the tournament. And the Mountain West was listed at 3.5. The Mountain West hasn't won 4 tournament games in the last 8 years combined, and Spur hopped all over that. And it's looking good. They've won 2 so far, but they have to have San Diego State go to the Elite 8, go to the Final 4. It's the only way it'd work. Every other Mountain West team lost their first
Nobody
game.
else won?
No.
Utah
State
Boise
lost. Nevada lost. Boise State lost.
Yikes.
So San Diego State would have to go to the Final 4.
No, I don't think that's going to happen.
That ain't happening.
Right. So you're looking good at that.
Trace, I got to say, I'm pretty disappointed. I was told that on my drive to Greensboro, I would pass a Buc-ee's, and I didn't. It was in Richmond. I took a different way. I wasn't going to drive an hour out of the way for the Buc-ee's.
It's worth it.
So I've heard.
It's definitely worth it. You've got to go to a Buc-ee's at some point here soon.
No, trust me. I mean, I talk about it enough. One of my best friends who lived in Texas went to Buc-ee's religiously. I wanted the hoodie. I wanted to walk in here today with that hoodie on.
It is funny. It's like a religion in there, man. I mean,
It'll happen, Paul. Just give it time.
Right.
Oh, it will. I mean, it's not. It's Richmond, Kentucky. We'll get down.
Right. Not too far.
All right. So we're done with the show.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about the World Baseball Classic. But like if we were going to talk about the World Baseball Classic, we would maybe bring up the fact that the pool play games for the World Baseball Classic had more attendance than nearly 10 MLB teams had last year in their 81 home games. Like, we're not going to talk about the World Baseball Classic, but if we were, we'd talk about how Shohei Ohtani is the fastest growing follow on Instagram right now. Gained 2 million followers during the World Baseball Classic pool play games, which is over 200%. First baseball player to get over 3 million followers on Instagram. We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about the fact that Japan's TV ratings rivaled the Super Bowl. Over half of the TVs in Japan were watching the World Baseball Classic. But we're not going to talk about it. We're also not going to talk about the fact that Trey Turner, who won a World Series, played in a Game 7 of a World Series, said that his grand slam to beat Venezuela was his best baseball memory. We're not going to talk about that. We're just not going to talk about how successful the World Baseball Classic has been, and that the fact that the attendance has almost tripled, how the viewership was better than any regular season game in MLB history. We're not going to talk about it, though.
What game was that?
The Puerto Rico-Dominican Republic game.
Where?
It was in Miami.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, the closest that it had was some 2018 game with the Yankees, is what I read.
Okay.
Regular season. We're talking regular season game.
Got it.
But we're not going to talk about it. Simple as that.
I do love how I've turned into in the chat. I've turned into the anti-WBC guy. That's not necessarily what I was saying. I am saying it's still at a bad time. I am still saying that I wish that we could do this in a better manner. I'm not going to sit up here and act as if it hasn't been awesome, because it has been awesome.
It has been great.
I do think that we're in a position where the United States will start to care more about this just based off the atmosphere. It'll become a waste management open 16th hole type situation in this country because of the atmosphere. It's going to be in a situation where I think that it will be hard to get a ticket, and the tickets will become very, very expensive. If it's not already happening, I don't know. I haven't looked to see how much the tickets already cost, but they will be extremely expensive the next time. Because I do think in 4 years, if that's how they're going to continue to just develop this, and it's once every 4 years, I would like it to be a little quicker than that. Maybe 2 years would be cool, but I get 4 years is the World Cup model. But
they had to push it back. So 2021 was going to be the original World Baseball Classic because 2017 was the last one, so it'd be 21. And I wonder if they're going to do.
Are we on a 3-year schedule then, or?
It was going to be 17, then 21. That's 4 years, and they just pushed back the 21 to this year. So I wonder if they're going to play it in 2025. That I don't know.
Right. American pitchers are going to start pitching in this, largely because of a few things that I've seen. The players have said abundantly and made it abundantly clear that for their money or for their time, it's been some of the best baseball memories that they've ever had, period. And a lot of these foreign players that we already knew cared a lot about this because they were clearly playing. Many of them are saying that it's more important to them than the World Series, which that doesn't surprise me because those other countries, as you said, in Japan especially, and even like Latin America, it is their main sport. It is their Super Bowl. It is the 60%, as you said, in Japan is a wild number. And I wonder if we can get to a point in America where we care as much. I don't know if we will, but my point still lies into the fact that Paul Frischner didn't know that the championship game was played tomorrow. It's not your fault.
I assumed it was going for another, like these games have been so great, I just assumed it was going longer. Like, all I've been able to see is, like, an inning here, an inning there. But I saw Trey Turner's home run, and I didn't see, like, on the graphic where they were in the tournament. I was just assuming it was going for another, maybe 2 weeks. But then now that I look at the calendar, I guess we are close to opening day. So
right, yeah, opening day's
10
days away. So tomorrow is going to have – I'm very excited to see what the ratings will be tomorrow if Japan wins. I think if Mexico wins, it still draws a similar – because we owe Mexico one as Team USA and, they're very close proximity.
This could become the second biggest sporting event in the world outside the World Cup. I genuinely believe that.
Well, the Olympics.
Okay, the Olympics. I'm not going to count the Olympics, but as far as a non-Olympic thing, outside of the World Cup, I genuinely think it could become just as big. They have to move the time though. And I think Major League Baseball is in a position where if they've ever decided that they were going to start changing rules and doing things differently, they need to consider the idea of shaving 10 to 12 games from the regular season in Major League Baseball and playing this thing at some point during the middle of the year and make it a world event. Make it as if it is the Super Bowl in the United States. It would be massive. And you're going to have guys that are going to play in this regardless now. I get the idea of worrying about the team, but it's already been proven guys are going to get hurt. You can't stop the inevitability of guys getting hurt. The only question mark I've had from the very beginning, and the reason I got passionate about this in the first place, is I don't think it's reasonable to expect big-time arms to not be a little concerned about the idea of making a what I would call very stressful pitches early into a season. So that's one argument I make in regards to moving it back to the middle of the year. The second argument I make is just the timing of the fact that we have not just March Madness, but I mean there's other things that are going on during NFL free agency, like it or not, as stupid as that sounds, in the United States, that's going on. In the middle of the summer, it's not. That's a dead period. There's nothing going on. We all know it. So if the World Baseball Classic were to play it then, they would make enough money to pay those owners that are worried about their 12 games they're going to lose. They'd be able to pay them 20 games worth of whatever they would lose. That's how big it would be.
I think it's way more likely not to play it in the middle of the season, but if they just push the season back to – if you're going to restructure the schedule, which I don't think they'll ever do, but the only way that I could see them restructuring the schedule would be to push back the regular season a couple weeks and play it like alongside and not directly competing with the end of March Madness, the Final Fours and the championship, but have the pool play start that week, and then you get into the quarterfinals the week after, and you just start the regular season 2 weeks later than you typically would. That would solve all the problems, because I found myself as a fan of baseball not watching the game last night, quite honestly, when they're playing Cuba to go to the championship, because IU was playing, and I was more locked into that. I mean, I'd switch to World Baseball Classic every time that game went to break, but there is that problem. I just don't think it's likely that they'll change the schedule anytime soon. I truly think tomorrow is going to have fantastic ratings.
It will be. Every American that's a sports fan should have been locked in to Trey Turner's Grand Slam.
Yeah.
It should have been a live moment. It should have been the biggest moment of I'm not saying the calendar year, but without question, if you want to break it down from a financial perspective, the quarter. If you want to break it down from a quarter's worth of sports, that is the biggest moment that could have happened in American sports. And instead, and it's nothing against anyone. I'm not trying to say that the WBC is not doing well or whatever. I'm just saying that there was probably 50% of people that would have loved to seen that live that just didn't know that it was going on because they were watching March Madness. That just can't be a thing. The NFL draft is purposely put in a spot. Like, there's a reason they don't do the NFL draft in the middle of March.
Right.
They wait. If you want to take a lesson from anybody, it's the NFL and how you market a product. You go find windows of opportunity to where there's not a whole lot going on, and you make it as big of a deal as you possibly can, and you try to make it seem like it's more important than maybe it even is. Let's be honest. Schedules in the NFL, I've said this from time to time, they could release those damn things on a Tuesday afternoon and give you the whole entire schedule, tell you who you're playing, where, what time, and what television station. And if they didn't try to make a big deal about it, no one would care really. But instead, they make a big deal about your schedule, home and away, and then they make a big deal about, when you're playing. It's wild. The NFL is an incredibly marketing machine.
Baseball could also structure the schedule of the World Baseball Classic around March Madness. Like last week, we had the first 4 during the week. Monday through Wednesday, we have the first 4.
Right.
But you can play those games right then. You can play as many games through Monday, Wednesday, and then just not play Thursday through Sunday. Start it back up today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, and then do it all over again once the Sweet 16, and then finish it up next week. Have the quarterfinals, semifinals, and championship be next week, and just zag away from the March Madness games. And
right. But I just think when you think another thing with Major League Baseball, and I don't know how you fix it. The only way you fix this is stuff that's never going to happen because financially it's not prudent to do this. Is one, if you shortened the season to where you felt like the games meant a little bit more. And the other thing too is like the World Series is being played in a position within the calendar season from a weather standpoint for half the nation, if not more, in quote unquote football weather. You know, it'd be nice to be able to go to a World Series game no matter where you're at in shorts and a t-shirt and be able to go get a hot dog and a beer because that's what baseball is. You know.
You're talking about World Series?
I'm talking about just MLB in general, just baseball in general. And it's never going to change. I'm not suggesting that they're going to do it. But could you imagine in the NFL going and watching the Super Bowl and it's 97 degrees in Arizona? Like, that's not right. That doesn't feel right. So there's something to that as well.
That's just coming from a Reds fan who hasn't had a whole lot of October.
Well, I'm not saying I'm not going to go. I'm not complaining. I mean, it could be 5 degrees. I'll go down to Great American Ballpark.
But I'm saying you associate cold weather with baseball because you haven't been there. It's okay. It's okay.
I've been there.
The day's coming.
I know you have.
I've been there.
Yeah, I've been there.
The day is
Look
coming.
at us.
Look at us.
And the day that it comes, these people are and I say these people, it's really just Reed. He's going to be absolutely earmuffs. If you have kids, mute the thing. He's going to be fucked. Because I am going to talk so much shit every day that he's going to quit this company. I'm going to walk in here and I'm going to say, hey, Reed, you want to go down to the Reds game? They're playing today. And I'm going to tell him when he gets to the stadium, he doesn't have a ticket. Sorry, I lost it.
It's so welcoming to know that I have job security then. I mean, it's just be here a long time here, Trace. All right, let's go. What are we betting on tonight?
I'm not betting. I had so much success over the weekend that I just don't. I want to keep it clean. See the board again. My early indication, I think I like Xavier. So I'm gonna wait, but I think I like Xavier just based off that line, based off what I know, based off of Texas's reputation of being really good. But I've seen Texas play enough this year to know that they also aren't very good there at certain times.
I like take Japan to win by 2 tonight. Really. They've got a 21-year-old guy that I've heard a lot about. Haven't been able to see him play.
Okay.
Roki Sasaki. He's supposed to be the next guy to defect over, whatever they call that. They normally wait till they're like 25, so maybe he'll come a little bit earlier like Shohei did. But Sasaki's supposed to be the next guy, and so many Japanese pitchers have gotten their start in the World Baseball Classic. That is the one thing that it's given a platform. Daisuke Matsuzaka became a household name in the World Baseball Classic. Yu Darvish, similar. Aroldis Chapman's a player that became a household name in the World Baseball Classic. So this is where names are made, and take Japan to win by 2 tonight.
Japan win by 2. Paul, you got any NIT? Is there any CBI games going on?
So there is a CBI game going on right now.
Beautiful.
Seth Pryor's Eastern Kentucky Colonels are playing Indiana State right now.
What's the score?
It's a barn burner, Trace. It's 47-43 at halftime.
What?
Yeah.
Now that's my kind of basketball.
CBI. I don't know. Are all these games CBI? I thought the NIT wasn't picking back up till.
These are all CBI games.
Are these all CBI games?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go with. But Wisconsin, Milwaukee, that's not the same as. Who is this school?
47-40.
That's University of Milwaukee.
43.
Right?
Well, no, I thought the University of Milwaukee was in the NIT. I could be wrong.
I'll tell you one thing. I know many of you in the chat act as if you don't like the NBA, and that's fine. I'm not here to tell you that you should have to watch anything in life. You can do whatever you want to do. However, the NBA, if you give it a chance, it's a pretty damn good product. There's just incredible basketball players on this planet Earth, and they play that game about as well as you can play it. And if you watch the NBA this weekend and or any moment in time between now and next Thursday, you will quickly realize that college kids cannot shoot the basketball at even remotely a close clip to these guys in the NBA. They make basketball look like it's two different sports.
If you watch the first half of the Kentucky K-State game, the NBA is the complete opposite of that. I mean, they were, I think, did you guys watch the first half of the Kentucky K-State game? The teams were combined 1 for 20 from 3. I think Big Cat from Barstool put out a hilarious tweet. Just said, because they're running up and down the floor, just chucking up shots, and they're just bricking every single one of them. And Big Cat threw out a tweet and said, like, these guys are trying real hard to score. Got to give it up to them. It was funny. The NBA is the complete opposite. Every open shot, sink it.
Yeah. I'm gonna go. Oh yeah, here we go.
Did you find something, Paul?
Radford and San Jose State.
We love the Highlanders.
Love the Highlanders. I'm gonna go over 125.5.
Man, that sounds fun to watch. Can you imagine?
The juice is on the under too. That's what I love.
Let's take the over.
If you bet that game, don't watch it. Right?
No.
Don't invest. In fact, your time of those 2 hours is worth way more than whatever you're going to bet on that game.
So
seriously,
my brother went to Radford, played baseball at Radford, and when he went to Radford, they played Tyler Hansborough's Tar Heels in the first round of the tournament, going all the way back to what we were talking about earlier when these 1 versus 16s were 60-point blowouts. I was so excited for my brother's college to make the NCAA tournament. They take on Tyler Hansborough's Tar Heels. Final score was like 110-50. Just a 60-point blowout. Don't see that anymore. But love the Highlanders in this one.
Love the Highlanders.
Take the points.
Take the points. That was 2009? 101-58.
Yeah, so 40-point, 33-point blowout.
Hey, but they can say they were the first game in a road to a national championship.
That's right.
Let's take the Colonels live. What's the live line?
Oh, great point. I just X'd it out. I think it was plus 5.5.
Colonels live is plus 7.5.
7.5.
Plus 7.5.
Bet up.
Plus 7.5.
Plus 3.
Is it halftime? Is it halftime?
It is halftime.
Plus 7.5. Colonels. Lock it in. We're going to watch the rest of that game as we figure out a way to go to lunch. And there's only one way to figure out how we're going to go to lunch on this show, because I'll tell you right now, I will not let Mouse cop down ever again. I'm tired of hearing it. I did not want to hear it. He held us accountable. The rest of the chat held us accountable. I will not be called a fraud again. We will put the wheel of lunch up there. We will put Sonic up there. And we will try to fill this board up with as many options as we possibly can outside of Sonic, so just Sonic's percentages go down.
All right. What's next?
Also, Mouse Cop, congratulations to your boy Jerome Hunter. He played fantastic this weekend. Because we know you are the Jerome Hunter fan club. We know that for a fact.
On the Mouse Cop parlay yesterday.
I thought we had another chance in the
yeah, that's true.
16.
That's true. What do we got here? Throw Culver's up there.
Culver's.
Everett with breaking news.
What?
Did you guys hear that the volcano menu is coming back to Taco Bell?
Don't know what that is. Is that just spicy stuff? Is it just tortillas, cheese, and...
It's a great chance that it's going to be nacho cheese,
tortillas,
shredded cheese,
right,
refried beans, maybe ground beef, sour cream, all mixed together in some kind of way.
There we go. What else we got in here?
Sonic, Panda, Cane's, Culver's, Taco Bell, McDonald's.
Looks good.
Just those?
What were you about to say?
I was going to say a couple different ones, and I stopped myself because I just didn't want to go that far. What about the barbecue joint right here? Neil's.
Neil's?
All right. We good with this?
Add Jollies. Throw Jollies on there, too.
Oh, wow.
Jolly's got to be in the
As
chat.
many as I can get on there
I do love
that
Jollies.
makes Sonic's opportunity to go down.
All right. If we get Jollies,
that's
I'll
it.
be very excited. But we got to go to the West Side one. Because it's better. Objectively.
Oh,
I got to get this EKU.
There you go, Trace.
Sonic's gone.
Sonic's gone.
Oh, now this is what you call winning.
I could really go for some Culver's.
Yeah, well.
Get!
Oh, staying alive.
Bum, bum, bum.
Paul, we had a really educated conversation about jinxes on Friday during the Xavier game.
Oh, they don't exist.
They don't exist.
So, what was it? It's like World Baseball Classic.
Yeah. I got religious with them.
Oh,
No jollies.
So fraudulent. Neil's is closed.
Neil's
is closed. So that's no lunch.
That's a no
Wow,
lunch.
this just turned into a bit. Okay, never mind.
Okay. How do we lose there? They seem like 3 winners.
Yeah, I'm happy with any of these.
Is EKU money line an opportunity? Am I being really greedy?
I still have a Fred bet. I was out of the state of Ohio.
Beautiful, Paulie.
I still have a Fred bet.
Good
I can
for
get
you.
back in the game.
Put it on EKU.
No.
Should I do that?
No, I don't think so.
Come on, baby, Culver's. That's how you start off a week.
It is Culver's.
That's good. I wanted to go there. That's good. All right, cool. We're going to Culver's.
Seth, is this like?
Seth, is EKU going to win this
Do we
game?
have a chance, Seth? We need to know. Let us know, Seth, quickly. I need to know.
I know we said we weren't betting today, but it looks like there's an opportunity.
Right.
Oh, Seth.
What'd he say?
EKU money line plus 340.
340.
Uh-oh, Boom Shakalaka took the Sycamores.
Oh, no. All right.
Not much. Oh, Seth says not much confidence.
Our degenerate selves are going to go find a way to eat lunch and sweat out this Eastern Kentucky Indiana State Sycamore basketball game. If that's not playing blackjack at the casino at 1 o'clock on a Wednesday, then I don't know what is.
Let's go play blackjack at the casino at 2.
If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus, state of Ohio. Again, thank you to Betfred Sportsbook. They let us do this show. They give us their hard-earned money that they win from other people's hard-earned money that they lose. And we're appreciative of that. And until next time, which will be Wednesday for those that are counting, we'll see you from Box Lunch.